What is a concern for people watching right now who are heading maybe east into our viewing area? What can they be aware of right now?
Well, right now we're in a bit of a lull.
Good.
We got one band that's already made its way through. We're not expecting to probably see another band until later on this afternoon. So there's time to get on the road now. If you are waiting to do so, you're going to have to be patient. You know, give yourself a little extra time on the roadways to account for heavier traffic that may be not necessarily in the area right now. That we're in the Calcasieu area, exiting, you know, towards Vermilion Parish and things like that.
Right.
Jeff Davis Parish, but it's going to get worse as you probably get towards Lafayette in terms of traffic.
Right.
But you're at least getting your way out of the area of concern.
Right.
We are in a different period of time.
Yeah.
We're in
That's a good way to put it.
Pandemic
Right.
of time. So you have to remember, bring your mask. Make sure that you are aware of your symptoms. Make sure that you're checking in with family and loved ones, making sure if you're going to be heading to their house that they have a way of either quarantining or things like that in case a need arises in that regard. So all these things are now fresh in our mind.
Yeah.
With evacuations.
Right. And when we talk about having these conversations even while you're in the car heading to where you're planning to evacuate, the best resource you can look at is getagameplan.org. That is actually run by the Louisiana GOSEP, the Governor's Office of Homeland Security, to have these conversations about what's important. I spoke with a family who said that they are actually evacuating to their parents' home, whose parents, they actually have COVID. So I believe we have another look right now at Baton Rouge right now. Jeff, what do you think?
Right. So we're here where we're broadcasting from, Baton
Right.
Rouge, we are dealing with some really raucous weather. We've had a number of tornado warnings that have come into effect. Our phones have been going off left and right because of the emergency alert system. So if you encounter a situation like that, be sure to get off the roadway and find a safe space if at all possible. But again, this is as far east as 3 hours away. So by the time you get here, it will probably have passed.
Right, and that's the thing, is we want to make sure you guys are best prepared, and that's why we're broadcasting to you, making sure everyone over there at KPLC is making their way safely here to Baton Rouge, and we understand that the KPLC team is also on their way, and that's why we're trying to help you get the information you need. Again, the best information for those of you who live in Calcasieu Parish is going to be the Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's website, because they are sharing all the relevant information from the police jury, from the Nick Hunter, the mayor's office there, and they are sharing everything that residents need to know, and I believe you are getting that.
And then another point we probably want to make is where to evacuate.
Yes.
Because where's the safe place to be? And you don't want to go north, because that's where Laura's going to go.
Right.
Going west is an option as long as you can probably get yourself west enough of Houston, because there's still going to be decent impacts in the Houston area. But obviously, the west side of a storm we typically say is the drier side. I'll put air quotes kind of over that.
Right.
Not always the case, but in this situation, with the massive size of this system, you're going to have to get further enough west. As you go east, probably still want to get your way out of Lafayette. Baton Rouge, we're filling up in terms of hotel rooms, but you can head down I-10 towards New Orleans as an option. Going further east towards Slidell is another option as well. So getting as far away as you can. I know that's not convenient for a lot of folks that want to be close to home to monitor what's going on, but with technology these days, we're able to do that in the palm of our hands.
Right, and that's the convenient thing, and that's why we're telling you we have a crew that is safely stationed there at the L'Auberge in Lake Charles to get you that look, so you don't have to stay there. They're making sure that they're checking in with the local officials there to make sure that you know everything. To give you that live look of what's going on there, everything as they can. And of course, their teams are also working on trying to get you a look from all the different parishes from the KPLC viewing area too.
And so if you're looking like this, this is the KPLC Twitter account.
Right.
I mean, obviously, we haven't seen an update necessarily in about 2 hours.
Right.
Because our crews are
right.
They're on their way.
Yes.
So once they get here, this is going to start flooding with new information from their sources that they have on the ground.
Right.
From their reporters and our reporters that are on the ground in those areas.
Right.
So while you may not be getting updates from KPLC right now,
right.
it's because
they're trying to get into a safe place to get that
information. Out.
That's
right. Right now, they're heeding the warnings of those officials.
Exactly, and that's the thing. And you saw Wade Hampton not long ago doing the forecast over there from the Lake Charles side. They are still trying to get you that safety information you need to know, but that's why we're asking people to have that game plan, to be prepared, and to have that information handy. And again, you can still use the KPLC 7 News app. That's going to be your best resource to get the warnings and that information that you need to know if you are choosing to stay there, even if you have chosen to evacuate, you'll still get that information. And of course, we're going to make sure you get all of the news coming out of Lake Charles that's important. And speaking of the people who've chosen to evacuate to fill up the Baton Rouge hotels, we got that alert from our tourism office here in Baton Rouge that those hotels are filling up pretty fast.
Yes, and so obviously there's outlying areas here where you are a metro area, a metropolis, I guess you could say, a metroplex.
Yes.
So there are areas north, south, east, west of
Yeah.
Baton Rouge that you may have luck if other areas as you're going east are full.
Right.
But don't let that discourage you. Get as far away as you possibly can.
Right, and I've talked to a multitude of people and friends there in the Lake Charles area, some of them choosing to go towards Houston.
Sure.
Is that safe to do?
Go west if you have to. I mean, get far enough west. I mean, don't stop in Beaumont or Port Arthur or somewhere like that. Go as far west as you can. And Houston, west side of Houston would be ideal. But certainly that is a definite option for you if you want to go west. If that's a quicker way, or family in those areas. Right. By all means. Don't just necessarily go east. You can certainly go west. If you encounter price gouging, you have options.
The Attorney General's office, that is a key point to note. If you see that, take pictures of it, get evidence of it so you can report that to the Attorney General's office. Jeff Landry has said this time and time again, or his office rather, during times of emergency. That is illegal to do. So you want to make sure that.
You roll up on a gas station and they're charging $5 for a bottle of water.
Right.
That's price gouging.
Exactly.
You report that. If they're charging $8 a gallon for gas, that's price gouging.
Exactly.
We have implementations, rules, laws to prevent that. So to allow people to get away, to allow people to escape areas that are getting
a little hairy. Right. And when we talk about a situation like this, obviously, Jeff, there's a lot on people's mind. We've got a pandemic. We've got a hurricane coming. There's a lot to think about. The state also does have a crisis counseling hotline. It's free counseling. There are free resources. These are trained counselors for you to talk to because there is a lot going on, especially if you have a family to worry about. We also have that number, actually. KPLCTV.com should have that, as well as WAFB.com. Those, again, are trained counselors. This was set up actually during the pandemic. And when we talk about throwing that into the mix, there is certainly a lot to think about. We want to show you this. Ben Terry there. You see his Facebook page. You're getting a look there. He is on his way with a former KPLC TV meteorologist, Zach Fradella. You may have remembered him. He was there quite a few years. They are actually on their way right now to WAFB to get you that information. Obviously, Ben Terry, longtime KPLC TV legend. I actually was on the phone with him just a little while ago that they are probably about a half hour out. So they were getting out of that area, getting to safety to make sure you and your family have that information you need to know. But again, that update there coming from Ben Terry and Zach Fradella, who's now at WVUE in New Orleans.
So you're watching us now.
Yes, from
folks.
Baton Rouge.
We appreciate you doing that.
Yes.
If you have friends and family that are wanting the latest top story in the KPLC website is the Watch Live feature, which is our signal. So you can direct people there or just share it from wherever you're watching. If you're watching it on Facebook or things like that, social media, just share it so people know that we are still updating you. We may not be from where you are, but we are still passionate about keeping people safe and making sure that you get out if you're trying to get out.
Right, and that's what's helpful by having these sister stations and obviously employees who worked in that previous market. It was helpful for me to see, Calcasieu Parish and who the people are there, and to have Ben Terry come here, a great network of people we have all on the ground who are now on their way to help each other out, because this is a key time where we're trying to share information to make sure you and your family are staying safe right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can, let's just go back and do another weather report.
How about that?
Probably a good time to do that.
Okay.
So I'm going to pull up my source here.
Yeah, while Jeff gets set up, we're going to get you another look there at the 210 bridge in Lake Charles. As Jeff said, quite nice of a day there right now. 3:57 here on Wednesday as a mandatory evacuation is ordered there in Calcasieu Parish, in Cameron Parish, I believe in Jeff Davis as well. We've also learned that Vernon Parish is now under a mandatory curfew beginning at 10 p.m. The Sheriff's Office is going to be enforcing that. Jeff, do you have any new information for us?
So here's the thing. I wanted to mention that because we were coming up to the top of the hour, so we're getting a new coordinates and statistics related to Hurricane Laura as well as a new track. So let's take a look at this as we're looking at the first. You're looking at it the first time. I'm looking at it as well because we've been talking. 145 mile per hour sustained winds right now, northwest at 15 miles per hour. So it has strengthened once again by 5 miles per hour.
Hey, I got a text from Dylan that says Matt Live, look live needs to be coded. Was it already coded?
Still moving pretty quickly off towards the northwest. Expected to make a bit of a turn, and you look towards the end of the track here, and we definitely look like we're seeing a bit of a northerly turn, and that's what we've been waiting for. And it's the unfortunate thing that we've been waiting for folks in southwest Louisiana. It's a ridge of high pressure off towards the east, and Hurricane Laura has been on the southern periphery of that ridge of high pressure for quite some time, and it's been waiting to get to the edge. And once it reaches the edge, that's when it's going to take that hard turn towards the north and then drive its way up towards the north before it gets catched up by a trough north of Arkansas, and that's going to lead it off towards the east. So again, the latest, it has strengthened some more. 145 mile per hour winds. That is a Category 4 and a very strong Category 4 hurricane. So let's look at the forecast track, and we're pulling it full for you because this is very important. It is now forecast to become to make landfall at 150 miles per hour. So that is 5 more miles per hour than was forecasted previously with the last advisory that came out at 10 a.m. So the 4 o'clock track hasn't shifted any west or east. It is still primed for sort of the west side of Cameron Parish, arriving during the pre-dawn hours on Thursday morning. So we're talking landfall around or shortly after midnight tonight. As it moves quickly off towards the north, though, the tropical storm icon that you see there up towards the Shreveport area, that's by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So at 12 hours it's going to take to travel the entirety south to north of the state of Louisiana. That, if anything, is our only positive news that we are going to be seeing from this system. So we have a new tornado warning up towards the Fort Polk area. I'm going to take a look at radar here for you folks here. So this is the Fort Polk radar station. We're going to put that one just into play here and see. Let me pull up our Doppler velocity signature and see what we have. Bear with me here. I'm working on a tiny computer. All right, so not seeing anything too concerning, and it looks like maybe they've already canceled the warning. It might have been in effect until 4 o'clock, and that does appear to be the case. So we'll keep an eye out for any more potential impacts, especially to the north. But you'll note one rain band kind of north of Lake Charles, and then the core of the system is towards the south. And then as we put it into motion, you can see those rain bands moving from southeast to northwest, and they're moving fairly quickly. Now, any rain band that moves through is going to have the potential of producing isolated tornadoes, occasionally heavy rainfall, and also the potential of producing some gusty winds. We could be talking wind gusts on the order of maybe 30 to 40 miles per hour with these initial rain bands. Now, once the core begins to arrive, that's when the strongest of the winds are expected to occur. You see this red box here, and this red box is a tornado watch. That tornado watch remains in effect until 9 o'clock this evening, but don't be surprised if we get another one that is issued and another one that gets put into effect as we move towards the overnight hours, Wednesday night into Thursday morning, as the main energy of the system arrives. So bottom line here is a look at the warnings that are currently in place. Hurricane warning in effect for southwest Louisiana, the entirety of the KPLC viewing area. To the east of that is where we have a tropical storm warning. That's in effect for sort of Lafayette towards Baton Rouge. That remains in effect for several more days, although they'll cancel that before we reach Saturday in terms of that threat. Storm surge, that's the number one concern that we have for our local area in southwestern Louisiana. We're talking storm surge on the order of 15 to 20 feet, and I'm going to pause out of this for just a second and see if the National Weather Service has put out a new surge projection. So bear with me here as I pull up the National Hurricane Center page. And I just want to see if we've seen anything else. And no, they have kept it at 15 to 20 feet. So if we can pull that up, yeah, there we go. All right, so here's the storm surge forecast graphic straight from the National Hurricane Center. And you look here, and we're talking from Johnson Bayou to the Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge. That's where we have this stretch of 15 to 20 foot storm surge, but that includes Lake Calcasieu to the just west of that. So from Johnson Bayou to the Sea Rim State Park, we're talking on the order of 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. Let me pull that back up. Off towards the east of that then, from the Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge to Vermilion Bay, Intracoastal City, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, and then from Intracoastal City to Morgan City, we're talking about 8 to 12 feet of storm surge. So that's one of the big concerns. And we look at the, I'm going to pull up the storm surge inundation map, and that's going to tell us kind of how significant the storm surge is going to be in some areas. So when we kind of zoom in this perspective, let me see if I can find the, trying to find the key here for, there we go. So anything in red is storm surge 9 feet or greater above the ground. And look how much of southwest Louisiana is covered in that red shade of color towards Cameron Parish, into Calcasieu Parish, and towards the east into Vermilion Parish. So this is what we're talking about. Storm surge on the order of 9+ feet in these particular areas. And here's the coast kind of right here. So we're talking pushing into inland areas, and we can get even closer here with the map. It's going to take probably a little bit of time for it to resolve the picture, but here's Lake Calcasieu right here. So we're talking even far enough into from Lake Calcasieu that we're going to be dealing with storm surge above 9 feet in the Lake Charles area. So you see Lake Charles kind of labeled right here, and that's, I'm just barely not even touching it, and it's moving. Even further north than Lake Charles, we still have a few little specks here of 9+ feet of storm surge. So that is significant. That is something that we're going to have to watch for as we really kind of keep an eye on this system. So pull back the map. Let me restart the show here. And we're going to advance back to our past our storm surge. And our other threat is really going to be severe weather in addition to the threat for storm surge, where we're already contending with a couple of tornado warnings that we've seen. These tornado warnings will continue as we move through the afternoon into the evening hours. Probably significant more impacts into Jeff Davis Parish, Acadia Parish, towards the Crowley area, where we have this enhanced risk of severe weather. But as I mentioned earlier, a tornado watch remains in effect until 9 o'clock, but we're likely to see that get extended. So the Lake Charles area, while we're under a slight risk of severe weather at 2 out of 5, still significant enough to take the threat of tornadoes very seriously too if you haven't evacuated. Marginal risk of severe weather as we move towards Thursday morning into Friday morning. A better opportunity for severe weather as you go a little bit farther towards the east. Why is that? As Laura moves inland, it's going to start to get some feeds of moisture coming off the Gulf of Mexico, wrapping around its circulation. It's these feeds of moisture that's going to produce showers and thunderstorms, and oftentimes those feeds kind of get displaced into the right-left quadrant of the storms. So that would put, if it stayed due north right along the state line, kind of keeping Lake Charles maybe a little bit shielded and allowing for those rain bands to kind of make their way into Acadiana and Baton Rouge. So that's why these areas to the east of Lake Charles under a more significant risk of severe weather as we move into tomorrow. So the possible impacts are all pretty much in the extreme caution category. We could see upwards of 10 to 15 inches of rain widespread across southwest Louisiana. The strongest winds are expected to be right at the coast, because Laura is expected to weaken significantly once it makes landfall, but right along the coast is where we expect to see those Category 3, Category 4 winds, perhaps Category 3, Category 2 strength winds as it moves further inland. The extreme surge is the #1 probably problem, even though all of them are going to be significant in the area. Extreme surge pushing inland, not just along the coast. We have to reiterate, this is going to be an inland issue for storm surge as well, even into the Lake Charles area. So we have to take that threat extremely serious, because that takes a long time to get out of the way. Rainfall estimates that we've seen, this is one of our high resolution models, all these white shades of color, that's 10+ inches of rain. Again, I said 10 to 15 inches of rain. Where you see some of these white shades of color, that is certainly where it's going to be possible. 7, 8, 9 inch rainfall totals shaded in that purple and pink color. That too pretty widespread across southwest Louisiana, even stretching eastwards towards Acadiana. Another model outlook is the HRRR. Here's a look at that, a little bit less in terms of rainfall totals because it moves the system through fairly quickly. And let's show you that model. Again, possible rain bands kind of moving through the rest of the afternoon into the evening hours. Then the circulation itself, Laura itself, will be approaching and attempting to make landfall. The Hurricane Center forecast suggesting right around 1 a.m. Notice by midnight, the HRRR model suggesting still a little bit offshore, making landfall maybe around 2, 3 o'clock according to it. But look at these intense rain bands near the Lafayette area, and those are the rain bands I was talking about where we could be seeing some significant rainfall. It's these rain bands right here. Now the main circulation is going to have that intense rain, but also the intense wind, and even once the system moves inland, we're still dealing with that persistent southerly flow pushing water from the Gulf of Mexico inland. So storm surge doesn't necessarily end on the top side of the storm. Even as the storm moves inland, we are still expecting that persistent southerly flow pushing that water out of the Gulf of Mexico into inland areas. Continuing the animation, you can see it's going to take its time, but moving fairly quickly. By 10 o'clock in the morning, remember we were estimating landfall with the HRRR model around 2, 3 a.m. By 10 a.m. already towards the west of Alexandria near the Toledo Bend area. Those heavier rain bands beginning to set up across Metro Baton Rouge, and then we maybe start to see a little bit of some drier weather, but the winds are still going to be fairly intense. Again, moving forward in time as we head through the afternoon, things start to become a little bit more scattered in nature, but still expecting some remaining showers and thunderstorms to continue across portions of South Louisiana and even into Friday for folks in Southeast Louisiana. If you're headed this way to evacuate, we still could have some impact, some localized flooding as well. So those are the concerns. I'm going to go back to our map of the beast, I guess we'll call it. This is significant in terms of what we're looking at. The eye is becoming very visible, a rapidly intensifying hurricane as it approaches the southwest Louisiana coast. We have one of our reporters live in the field here this afternoon. Let's check in with him. Matt Houston, what do you have for us?
Mic check 1 2 1 2. 1 2 3 4. Mic check 1 2 1 2. 1 2 3 4. Mic check 1 2 1 2. 1 2 3 4. Mic check 1 2 1 2. 1 2 3 4. Mic check 1 2 1 2. 1 2 3 4. Yeah, Liz, we appreciate it. I want to set the scene for you right now. We're overlooking the Calcasieu River from the LaBerge Casino parking garage in between the Port of Lake Charles and the Interstate 210 bridge is over my shoulder. If I look there now, I see one semi-truck going over, and if I look on the I-10 in the other direction, I just see one semi-truck. So that's probably a good sign that the folks who are on their way are already out of the area. Of course, mandatory evacuations in place right now for most of the parishes in southwest Louisiana, and all day long you've heard from meteorologists, depending on whatever station you've been watching, telling you it's time to get out and get going to where you are headed to stay safe here. This morning when we arrived, we came off the Louisiana coast in Cameron Parish, where we really expect the worst damage to be. There was not a soul on Holly Beach, where we expect really lots of damage to occur throughout today and later on into tomorrow morning. As we got further north, we saw more cars, and then now almost nothing, and that's a good sign to see a ghost town prior to this hurricane, because you don't want your family, your loved ones, and you to be in this area. And we did see some folks making final preparations. We watched people boarding up some of the shopping centers in Lake Charles, slapping those wooden boards over windows, just trying to make sure that the glass doesn't break if the winds really reach this area in the way that we expect that they will. We also saw power companies, or rather tree trimming companies, who had been hired out by power companies in the area to come and try and get branches off the power lines, just trying to maintain that power for as long as they possibly can. You've heard the meteorologist on your station, KPLC, saying all morning we expect widespread power outages throughout southwest Louisiana. That is why they're trying to get out ahead of that and just keep things up and running for as long as possible, so emergency workers and everyone else can get to where they need to go with electricity for as long as possible. That's the sort of last-minute preparation, but the most important preparation that we have seen is people leaving, and we imagine that will continue to happen. The rain lasted from about 1 o'clock to 2:30 this afternoon, and it was hard and sideways, and we expect that's a primer for the shellacking that southwest Louisiana will get later on this evening. But since then, for the last 90 minutes or so, it's hot and humid, not a drop in the sky, but man, the skies are certainly gray, and we expect they will darken overnight and into tomorrow morning when they really start to open up and dump all of that water on southwest Louisiana. We're also expecting big storm surges, which is what we're looking for right now on the Calcasieu River, as well as just north of the lake of Lake Charles. And we'll keep our eyes on that and see what happens. But again, we're expecting lots of damage, lots of water, lots of wind. So it's important that you stay informed here and make sure you are getting out of the area where you need to go if you have not left already. Outside the Calcasieu River, in between the port of Lake Charles and I-210, I'm Matt Houston. It was back to you.
All right, thank you, Matt. And Matt is one of our pro reporters, Liz.
He certainly is.
So he's got you covered.
Yes.
In Lake Charles.
And that's why we know he's in a safe spot. We've communicated with him and our teams there to make sure that he's safe. He's taking cover there at the L'Auberge Casino in Lake Charles.
Yeah, and he's been reporting for us from the Holly Beach area in
Yes.
Cameron Parish, and as he mentioned in his report, that's where ground zero is probably going to be,
right,
where some of the most significant damage is probably going to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of folks kind of use that as a maybe weekend retreat, holiday kind of
right.
area
The camps
around.
there.
Yeah, the camps
right.
there. Some of the rentals or kind of vacation rentals are
right.
there. So that's the area that was devastated by Rita, but they rebuilt. It's a resilient community, albeit a small community. They'll
That's
rebuild
right.
once again, I'm sure, after this one.
They are mighty, and I remember when we did our Hurricane Rita special a few years ago there at KPLC, the resilience is the one thing that comes through, but that's why it's hard to see this weather. It may not look bad right now, but we know that it's coming. Jeff showed you that, Wade showed you that not long ago, and that's why they have asked people to evacuate and leave those areas.
Right, and heed the warnings. That's all we can really tell you. If you've been on the fence, know that this is going to get much, much, much worse.
Right. And speaking of warnings, we are also learning about some other curfews that are going into effect in the Lake Charles area, kind of the neighboring parishes. I've just seen on their website now, Beauregard Parish is now under a curfew. I believe theirs starts at dusk and goes till dawn. Allen Parish also now under a curfew. That starts at 8 p.m. and goes into effect at 6 a.m. We told you about Vernon Parish going under a curfew effect as well. All of these enforced by the local sheriff's office there, and this is really key because we know that this is going to come, Laura is going to come during a time when people are going to be sleeping, Jeff. You have to be on guard. You have to be paying attention to all the things that are happening, but there's no need to be driving out just to see what it looks like. There's no need to go outside and drive along to see what your neighbor's house look like.
Especially at night.
No, especially when a Category 4 storm is coming.
Potentially
to that
Category 5. I mean,
yes.
again, 150 mile an hour winds at landfall is only 5 miles an hour removed from a Category 5. So we're really splitting hairs here. I mean, 5 miles an hour doesn't really make a difference when we're talking about 150 mile an hour winds. So again, as you mentioned, Beauregard Parish, dusk till dawn. Vernon Parish, technically in effect until 10 o'clock, but shelter in place if you're there.
Right. And just because you think you don't see a sheriff's deputy out and about, just stay home. That's the best word of advice. They want everyone to stay home during the storm. They don't want to be unnecessarily sending out their deputies or their officers and put them in harm's way when you talk about a storm as dangerous as this one. And so when we talk about getting the best news source, getting that updated information, KPLC 7 News app is going to be a best resource. There's also a KPLC 7 First Alert Weather app as well, where the team is constantly monitoring that and sending you those push notifications when you need to know it. So that's going to be really key. If you don't have those already downloaded, if you do not have power, if you lose power, you will still get those alerts on your phone, right?
Right, and it's best while you have power to make sure that all your devices are charged.
Yes.
If you have those portable chargers, those keychain looking things that you can plug into your phone to give you some extra boost and energy, charge those. Make sure the laptop is charged. You can plug your phone into the laptop if you need to get a quick charge from that
Now is the time to do it while you still have power. All your power banks, all the things like that. You want to have that on standby.
And I mean, if you get desperate, you can turn on the car, power it up. Don't turn on the car inside a garage or something like that. Carbon monoxide is certainly a big problem, but that's maybe a last resort. This is an interesting map, and this is what I was trying to kind of zoom in on. They posted that. This is sort of the inundation storm surge map, and again, where you're seeing some of these shades of red, we're talking greater than 9 feet above the ground. So we're talking feet on the ground. 9 feet above that at minimum when you were looking at the red. And look how far it stretches in some of these tributaries and waterways. And I didn't mean to click on that. Now we're going to pull us up. But you look at this, how far north it goes. Here's the interstate system. So the interstate itself, the governor, I think in his press conference mentioned there's a possibility that I-10 could get completely shut down through the Lake Charles area. So that's why it's going to be critical. If you can get out now, get out now.
Right. While we are showing you the images of it still being, albeit cloudy, it's still the time. You still have time. And that's what Dick Gremion, the director there at the Calcasieu OSEP office, was saying. You know, if you haven't evacuated yet, you still have time, but that window is closing in. So you really want to make sure if your family is deciding, should I stay, should I go? If you have a place to go, you want to go. And they're working on getting information on sheltering set up. Now, the governor did mention that they don't want to utilize those big shelters right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They're trying to get as many people in local hotels in the Baton Rouge, the capital region, as possible. But if possible, if they really need to, they're going to set up mass sheltering.
Now, you spoke to the mayor earlier of Lake Charles. What was his message? What was his bottom line to the folks around the area?
So they know people who are choosing to stay are going to stay, but they're asking them to shelter in place. And just be advised, if you get into a situation where you need to call 911, it's going to take some time to get to you. It's not going to be immediate as if there weren't a Category 4 storm coming or anything like that, because they told me flat out, if there are the sustained maximum winds of 140 miles per hour, they can't put their deputies and officers in that position. That puts them in danger, and they can't get to you to get help. So if you're going to evacuate, get to wherever you're going safely. That was the main message.
And that's important, and that's a good message to have. If you're going to be staying because you went through Rita, and you went through Rita and it seemed fine. This is worse than Rita. Much worse than Rita. Rita was a Category 3 at landfall in 2005. This is going to be upper Category 4, potentially Category 5 at landfall. We're talking about a significant issues with this storm.
And you, of course, have all those people who say, I grew up in Louisiana. We keep hearing the storm's going to be bad, the storm's going to be bad, and it's not. But we cannot emphasize enough. The governor said this morning, the National Weather Service said it in the press conference there in Calcasieu Parish, this could be an unsurvivable storm. Jeff, I can't emphasize that enough. People need to heed these warnings and take it seriously.
And the big quote from the governor during his press conference was, I may not be getting across how serious this message is. If my emphasis is lacking, I apologize, because this is significant.
You could hear it in his voice.
You could hear it in his
sounded
voice.
Certainly concerned about our state residents, especially in the southwestern region of our state. Now, again, for mandatory evacuations, Jeff Davis, I believe Calcasieu and Cameron, and voluntary evacuations in some of the other outlying parishes. I believe Beauregard at last check was under a voluntary evacuation. But they're really asking people who live in mobile home areas, in RV parks, really asking people to get out of those areas, because we know how dangerous it can get. When we talk about these maximum sustained winds, it can get to be a really dangerous situation. So if you know, or there is a place you think you can find refuge in, whether it is east or west, now is the time to evacuate, to get out of those areas, those mobile homes, those RV parks and places like that, because we just don't know what it's going to look like even a couple hours from now. So we're asking you to take this seriously, to heed these warnings. And again, if you want to find out about the latest weather tracks or weather alerts, our team, the KPLC 7 team, is also working on that to make sure you and your family are as safe as possible during Hurricane Laura.
Right, and so this is what you're looking at is the wind field.
Okay.
So we're looking
at, what does
that
mean?
So the wind field is the radius of which we see tropical storm force and hurricane force winds. So the center, this white circle, and then the hurricane force winds extending out from that circle, and then the tropical storm force winds extending out from that circle. So we're talking about sustained tropical storm force winds, sustained hurricane winds. And you look at this and you may not think this is a big circle, but this is going to take up all of southwest Louisiana.
Wow.
So, I mean, the impact is going to be there. And you note that it stretches further towards the east. When we typically talk about tropical systems, the east side is the worst side. That's just downright what it happens. But look how far to the west it still extends, especially those tropical storm force winds. Now, I haven't had a chance to read the actual advisory from the National Hurricane Center, so I don't know the actual
we can go through
extent.
It together.
So we can look at it. So
this just came out at 4 p.m.?
Right. So this came out at 4 p.m. So you see here, 155 miles south of Lake Charles. So we're 155 miles south of Lake Charles from the center of the storm. 145 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, moving northwest at 15 miles per hour. Now they put all this sort of information in here as well, and I'm just going to scroll through that just a little bit and see. They usually list right here. Hurricane force winds extend outward up to 60 miles.
Wow.
From the center. Tropical storm force winds extending outward 205 miles from the center. To put that into perspective, Lake Charles to Baton Rouge, about 140 miles.
Wow.
So we're talking
puts it into
tropical storm
perspective.
force winds extending out 205 miles. That's past Baton Rouge. That's towards probably Hammond.
Right.
You know, if you're familiar with your geography of Baton Rouge. So the thing above it here, it says reports from Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter. So that's the aircraft that fly into these systems. They don't care how strong it is. They're going in.
Wow.
Even Category 4, Category 5. They indicate that the maximum sustained winds have increased to near 145. They have been in and out all day long. All they're continuing to find increases in wind speed. So this is an intensifying hurricane for sure.
Laura's no joke. It's
No.
safe to say Laura's no joke, and she's strengthening. It seems as we get these updates, it's getting stronger and stronger.
Right. We're getting a rapidly intensifying hurricane, and when we say rapidly intensifying, it doesn't mean that it's jumping up 10 miles an hour every hour, but 5 miles an hour is significant every hour.
Yes,
and that seems
and that
to
adds
be
up.
almost a little bit of the trend of what we're seeing.
Okay.
So next advisory, let me put that usually at the bottom. I think we're going to get an intermediate advisory, and they just put in every information that they can. Oh, there it is. So next intermediate advisory will be at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Complete advisory at 10 o'clock. So we'll probably get on the hour, though, new coordinates at least.
Okay.
But they'll update probably the winds, the motion, the movement.
It's still
at 7
helpful to
o'clock.
know when we
But
talk
yeah,
about
the
tracking a
coordinates are
storm.
important,
Yes, and I just got a notification from our app, actually, a coastal flood warning issued for much of southeast Louisiana coast, Mississippi coast, all the way into Alabama. So when we talk about that,
So why
coastal flood warning.
why is that? That's because of the wind field.
Wow.
That's because of that 205-mile stretch
Okay.
of potentially tropical storm force winds.
Wow.
Imagine that in your head about when we go back, and let's go back to that.
the map on that's.
So
Wow.
go back to that.
It's saying from Louisiana through Mississippi to Alabama. When
Right.
you talk about that stretch of land, that is, look at
So
that.
you look at that, but keep in mind when you're looking at that,
Okay.
the circulation is still pumping water, or it's pumping wind north.
Right.
So all that water from the Gulf is wrapping up into northern areas. So you're talking about going into Mobile Bay, going into Pensacola Bay,
Wow.
going towards Apalachicola. We're still seeing those effects of that water just piling up. Now, it's
Wow.
not going to be as significant
Right.
as it is for us in Louisiana, but outlying areas are still going to be impacted by this, even though they may not see big direct impacts.
Yeah. So when we talk about people who are currently evacuating from Southwest Louisiana, who are thinking, should I go to Baton Rouge? Should I go? Obviously not Shreveport, it's going north. Would Alexandria, would Central Louisiana be a decent place to go?
Probably not, because
Okay.
what's going to happen here is as this moves north, you're still going to be in it.
Okay.
It won't be as strong, but the core is still going to be traveling that way. You want to get as far east or west as you can now before it makes landfall. So you see the hurricane warnings stretch all the way into Galveston Bay,
Okay.
which is the Houston area. Let me see. We'll put up the warnings map here. Let's see if I can get this to zoom in. Come on. All right, let's go to another one. So this is the whole cone. You see, we have hurricane warnings essentially from
Wow.
Intracoastal City
Okay.
to just west of Houston.
So is that near Port Arthur from the map? Is that
So
looking
Port
like
Arthur is probably where the M is.
Okay. Oh, all
To
right.
the west of that, that's Galveston Bay. So Houston sits on the north side of Galveston Bay. Galveston itself is sort of the barrier island on the south side of Galveston Bay.
Yeah.
And to the west of that, a little bit of a tropical storm warning towards, I'm not entirely sure of my southeast Texas geography. So best idea, get as far west as you can, past Houston, west side of Houston would be good.
Okay.
Far east as you can would be probably east of Lafayette.
Okay.
Those are your recommendations, I would say. And east of Lafayette is the Atchafalaya River, so you're going to have to go farther than that.
Right.
Over towards Baton Rouge. So
And obviously-
those are you're still going to get impacted.
Right.
I mean, you're still going to get rain and wind and tornado threat even in those areas. But for last minute get out,
Safer
those
places
are
to
better
be.
places to be. Yeah.
Right, and when we talk about resources pre-positioned at all these places, even if you see them along your evacuation route, we heard this morning Governor John Bel Edwards has called on all of the Louisiana National Guard. They've been pre-positioning their assets all over the state, but especially in Southwest Louisiana. We believe that they're also in communication with Texas officials for people who are going westward to see their resources over that way. But again, if you missed it here in the last 30 minutes, we now know that Vernon Parish, Beauregard Parish, and Allen Parish all under curfew right now. Now the times are going to be a little bit different. I believe Beauregard Parish is going to be dusk till dawn. Allen Parish is going to be 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. Vernon Parish is going to start at 10 p.m. The sheriff's offices all in these parishes going to be enforcing this, so you do not need to be out and about looking and seeing what's going on. Just stay home, because that's when we are expecting Hurricane Laura to make landfall in Southwest Louisiana.
All right, so here's your traffic map.
Okay.
So you can see we're all green through Lafayette. You're starting
Okay.
to get a little bit of some traffic over the Atchafalaya Basin Bridge, which is not surprising on I-10. And then once you get into Baton Rouge, we're sorry.
know.
Traffic
We
in Baton
know.
Rouge is probably just as bad as it is in Lake Charles, if not worse. And we'll ask the folks from Lake Charles when they get here how
Yes.
bad the traffic really is in Lake Charles. But yeah, you're going to run into some traffic, even if you try to go a little bit farther towards the east. So to get your geography, here's Lake Charles. You got Jennings, Lafayette, Baton Rouge. Denham Springs is a suburb of Baton Rouge, if you're not familiar. Prairieville, Gonzales, Zachary, all suburbs of Baton Rouge. And then you go further towards the east, you get towards the Hammond area. So it looks like traffic not too bad as you go east.
For people who are thinking, you know, I have family in New Orleans and Slidell and Hammond, is it safe to go there right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
you can get there. We're dealing with some tropical rain bands producing some isolated tornadoes, so that is a little bit of the concern. Other than that, though, I think you should be fine to get here if you can get here in enough time before the real bad weather. Locally, what we're expecting in terms of southeast Louisiana for the worst of the weather will be as landfall occurs.
Right.
So early Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon, that's when the worst will be for southeast Louisiana. Southwest Louisiana obviously will be a little bit sooner. All right, one of their own is here. Ben
Yes.
Terry is here.
Hi,
so
Ben.
I'm gonna hand it off to you. I'm
Okay.
gonna give everything to Ben and give
Okay.
him a little bit of a tutorial on what we're
Yes.
doing here.
Beautiful.
So you take over. Ben
Okay,
and I are
while
gonna
they kind of
chat
get
and
their
we'll-
situated here. Ben, welcome. You're going to see him pop in the
Hi.
shot for a second. He's going to, I know,
Oh, air hug.
air hug. We used to work
Yes,
together
we're
years
good
ago.
friends,
It's so
yes,
good to
it's
see
good
you.
to be here on better terms
Yes.
next time, though.
Well, I know.
Okay.
He's got his mask on. We're
Yeah,
taking as many precautions as we know you are at home too. We know that it is difficult during a pandemic to do all of that right now, but you are getting a live look right now at I-10, Lake Charles going into Westlake. You see not much traffic coming off of the I-10 bridge there. So again, folks, if you have to, or you're thinking about evacuating, Dick Gramion, the OSEP director there in Calcasieu Parish, saying you still have a little bit of time. But remember, folks, that window of time is closing. So you really want to make sure you have an idea of where you're going. You just heard Jeff Morrow saying there that New Orleans, Slidell, or anywhere west of Lake Charles is going to be a good, safe place to go to get out of the storm's path. We just saw, and we got that alert about that coastal flood warning, so you obviously don't want to go anywhere near that way, and that's why parishes like Cameron Parish have been evacuated, a mandatory evacuation from that area about 24 hours ago. Now you are getting a look at the 210 bridge there in Lake Charles. Again, looking good right now. It is pretty clean. I believe you are getting a look at the DOTD camera there, I-10 at the Calcasieu River Bridge. Looking pretty good, looking slow. So again, folks, if you are thinking about leaving, now is the time to go. Again, our KPLC team has actually arrived here. Ben Terry, part of the KPLC 7 First Alert Storm team, has made his way safely here with another former meteorologist from KPLC, Zach Fradella. He is actually at our sister station in New Orleans, VUE. So we're certainly grateful to have them here. We're certainly grateful that they have made it safely to Baton Rouge. Again, a testament to if you are thinking about leaving with your family, please do so. In the areas that have called for voluntary evacuations, like Beauregard Parish, if you live in a mobile home or in an RV park in that sort of area, please evacuate. With these winds coming in of 145 miles per hour, that is not a safe place to be, especially with debris that will be flying around. So if you want to make sure your family is safe, the 511la.org is going to be a great resource for you to see as we show you a DOTD camera right now. 511la.org is the best way to find out about resources, about routes, about any road closures, and make sure that you have that website handy on your phone, or you can actually download the app. You can search 511LA and that should come up right in the App Store. You're getting a live look there at the DOTD roadmap system across South Louisiana. We are zooming in right now to give you a look at the routes. They're all green coming from Beaumont to Lake Charles. You see a few stops there where traffic might be backing up just a little bit, but as we showed you in those cameras, not looking too bad right now. So if you are thinking about hitting the road, this may be a good time as you think about what you and your family are going to do for tonight into tomorrow. Obviously, a lot of people leaving that area as a mandatory evacuation has been called for Calcasieu Parish. And again, green is good. That's what you want to see when we talk about people trying to get out to go to a safer place here. And DOTD is going to be that best resource to see any road closures, any interstate closures. As Jeff Morrow showed you, one of those, the forecast there from the National Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center, was showing some of that the inclement weather could come up to the I-10 bridge. So when it gets to that point, obviously, it is not going to be safe for people to be out and about traveling on that route. So think about that now, you and your family. You know, we've been talking about having that game plan, and if you're trying to figure that out right now, good resource to look at is getagameplan.org. That is from the Governor's Office of Homeland Security. They have an entire list of what you and your family and your pets will need as you choose to evacuate. Again, a lot of resources at your fingertips, including the KPLC 7 First Alert Weather app. Again, that's going to let you know when tornado warnings, when Hurricane Laura comes in. They're going to send you an alert right through your phone. And something else we mentioned to make sure your phone is working, those power banks. If you have any of those lying around your house while the power is still on, you want to make sure all of those things are charged up. Make sure your laptop is charged up in case you lose power. You can still get those latest weather alerts. You can follow along on our live streams. That is always going to be on the website, kplctv.com. You are also taking a live look right now from our tower camera, I believe, in Baton Rouge. Lots of people making their way here to the capital city. Obviously a cloudy day, but we have not gotten much rain yet, so certainly good news for people making their way to the capital region from southwest Louisiana. And again, the governor is set to do another briefing tomorrow, we believe, here from Baton Rouge, so that'll be another update on how the state fares after Hurricane Laura makes landfall, impacting predominantly southwest Louisiana. But we are not in the clear here in Baton Rouge in terms of rain. We are expecting a little bit of rain and some of those tropical force winds, so we are trying to make sure you have that best information. And I appreciate Graham Elkins cycling through the different shots here to get you that information. So for those of you who have evacuated and you want to get a look at what's happening here at home, I-10, this is a live look at I-10 from Lake Charles going into Westlake. I believe this is the beach club, if I'm wrong, the Lake Charles Beach there. Near the tourism center. So that's the look you're getting right now from one of the sky cameras in Lake Charles. Again, we are hoping that you and your family are searching all the best resources. If we can pull up the Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Facebook page, again, another great asset when we talk about finding out local information. We did let you know just a little while ago, some of the water districts in Calcasieu Parish are under a boil advisory. I believe the Mossville Water District is also under a boil advisory right now. So certainly important information. Thank you, Graham. We see right there, Calcasieu Parish Police Jury sharing this information about 4 hours ago. Mallard Water District, I believe Big Lake Water District, all under a boil advisory until the time being. So folks who live out in those parts of Calcasieu Parish, you want to boil your water for at least a minute just to be safe. We know you and your family are trying to cook and take care of yourselves. So just be aware to check all of these different resources throughout the night and throughout this day, really, to find out that latest information. And another live look there at I-210 bridge in Lake Charles, coming on to Preon Lake. So our team is trying to get situated, and they're going to give you another weather forecast for your neck of the woods in just a little while. But just to let you know, we do have a crew that is safely stationed in the Lake Charles area. Matt Houston and Rick Porche, they started out in Holly Beach in Cameron Parish yesterday. They have since made their way up to Lake Charles, so they are safe. We have been communicating with them, and they're going to get you that look, and we're going to check in with them throughout the evening as Hurricane Laura makes her way to southwest Louisiana, bordering Texas. So certainly important to know, to make sure that you are aware of what is coming our way. And you can actually track the hurricane for yourself in the app. That's the cool thing about all of this technology, is we have these resources at our fingertips for you to see for yourself. So if you download the KPLC 7 First Alert Weather app, it's free. All you need to do is go to your app store, search KPLC 7 Weather, and that'll come right up for you. And you can see some of this technology that our weather teams are using to track Laura as it comes in. Because Jeff said just about 5-10 minutes ago, I believe Hurricane Laura is about 140, 150 miles away from our region, our state. So you just want to be sure that if you want to track it in real time, that's going to be a good resource for you to see. On top of getting those live weather alerts, some good information to have in your pocket, really. And when I also talked with Dick Greby on some other things, he told me was to keep checking their Facebook page, because they're also talking about routes. So DOTD is actually recommending I-20 as an alternate route. DOTD is recommending motorists use northbound routes like I-49, US 61, or I-55 to get to I-20 West. Just in case you hit any severe weather, they're asking you to take those routes ahead of time so you don't have to worry about hitting any congestion or anything. Again, 511la.org is a really good resource to find out what routes are still open for those of you who end up deciding to stay late or travel late, rather. That's going to be a good resource for you to find out which resources are still open, which routes are still open, which Graham has pulled up for you right here. The state's Department of Transportation's resource to show you all of the routes that are open. Again, green is good. That's what you want to see when getting out and about and getting around Lake Charles and getting out of Lake Charles. And Ben Terry, are you ready to roll?
Let's do it.
Okay.
We made it over here. We left our studios because it was just not safe to be there. Talking to some experts that we have in the area, the National Weather Service meteorologists there. Of course, the Weather Service office in Lake Charles had even evacuated.
Wow.
They closed their offices because they're actually south, closer to where the airport is located, which is on the south part of Lake Charles.
Yeah.
So storm surge is a problem there. But after talking to some experts there and hearing the words about how we could possibly see 6 feet of water in our building, so it just wasn't a safe place to be, and the possibility of this coming in as a stronger hurricane, maybe even a Category 5 at this point. Structural integrity of the station, is a problem.
Safe.
It wasn't safe,
Yeah.
so we've moved to a safer location, and we'll have Olivia Vidal. She's on her way here, so some familiar faces. Of course, you're a familiar face.
I know. It's
people,
good to see you under
yes,
unfortunate circumstances.
I know. People still ask me, "What about Liz?"
Oh,
sweet,
sweet.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. Good to see you again. I'm sure our viewers were pleased to see your face with us out there.
Well, for what it's worth, I miss y'all and sending big prayers to all of our viewers in the Lake Charles viewing area and the surrounding parishes. And I have to ask, Ben, before you start your weather forecast here, how was the journey from Lake Charles to Baton Rouge?
Yeah,
Let's talk about
that was interesting. We did have some delays. There was apparently at one point it looked like some sort of a wreck on the Atchafalaya Basin Bridge. We started getting some backups as we got closer to the bridge itself, and then traffic started moving. We had an emergency vehicle come through us, and then it was just kind of stop and go traffic. But as we got closer to the I-10, the Baton Rouge Bridge, the big bridge there, it was moving pretty steady, and we really didn't have any major delays. It may have taken us maybe an extra 30 minutes or so to get here than it normally would.
Not bad.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. You know.
Okay.
We did notice a lot of people were evacuating on the interstate. We could tell we had people we passed that had their dogs in the back of the truck.
Good.
So
Certainly
it was
good
obvious
sign.
that people are taking this seriously, and they're taking the warnings that we tried to make as dire as we could in those last moments that we were at the station. I'm not one to hype things up. I never have been. And people have always said, we don't hype things at KPLC, but this is a life-threatening situation, and I think people now are realizing that you got to get out. And you can see right there, I believe we're showing, I see over here actually on the main WAFB link that there's a view of I-10 there at the Calcasieu River Bridge, and traffic's pretty light, into Lake Charles. There was a crash on I-10 West there near the Shattuck Street exit, so that was causing some delays.
Okay.
It was raining when we left. You know what happens there? That's the big curve.
Yes.
And we had a couple of 18-wheelers that had jackknifed there, so and that was as we were leaving. So we were coming we were heading east, and that would have been on the westbound side. So that was backing up traffic, and I don't know what the plans are for that, because obviously you're faced with a situation now of you need to get out of here. So do you spend 2-3 hours, fixing this jackknifed 18-wheeler, or do you put your time and effort and just, getting the traffic to move? So we did notice that on the way out of Lake Charles. Looks like the rain for now has stopped. I know
it's looked clear for the last little bit.
Yeah, we had some heavy rain. Of course, we kind of drove through a few tornado warnings on the way over here. There had been some of those popping up on some of those bands, and that's to be expected. We talked about that with this storm, but we don't want to let that deter you from getting out of harm's way. At this point, the risk of you driving through a tornado-warned storm is a lot less than you staying for a catastrophic hurricane. So we try to convey that we're going to see more of these type of tornado warnings, and this is going to be a secondary threat to what is going to be catastrophic problems in Southwest Louisiana. Of course, I talked about this earlier. The national media is all in Lake Charles, convening as they typically do when you have issues like this.
Right.
But we're here for the long haul. We're your local television station. We're going to be with you as long as we're able to continue this broadcast. And with the digital age, we have ways of doing things. We've been working from home for 4 months.
Right.
We can do things remotely.
We've been trained to do this.
You can make it work.
That's right.
That's what we're going to be doing here from our friends here at WAFB. So.
Well, we certainly appreciate y'all making your way. I'm so glad you made it safely, and we're grateful to have you here. So
thank you so much.
I'm going to leave this to you.
Okay.
I'm going to find out what I can, but take it away.
Sure. Okay. Well, again, First Alert meteorologist Ben Terry. It is 4:42 on this Wednesday, and we are coming to you from the studios of WAFB, our friends here, great television partner in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, live on KPLC TV and KPLCTV.com and the 7 News mobile app, so Facebook live stream. So you can pick up this broadcast really through any form of our digital platforms. And so, I know a lot of you have evacuated, and I got a few text messages. I got a lot of text messages on the way over here from friends that heeded the advice, and they waited, until that last moment, because this is something that we talked about earlier. This is not anything we've ever seen before in Lake Charles. You cannot put a hurricane on and compare to what the damage potential could be with this storm coming in as strong as it is forecast to come in. Every storm is unique, so I hear all of these stories, and now I've heard you tell me about you made it through Rita, you made it through Ike. That's great, but this is a different scenario, and this storm is going to cause its own unique set of problems, and unfortunately they're going to be catastrophic problems. I'm particularly concerned about the storm surge throughout the area that is going to be much higher. You heard me talking to Liz there a second ago. The main reason why we left the studios at KPLC is because there literally is the potential that we could have 6 feet of water in our studios, and so that is not we're not going to risk our lives to that degree, because at that point we would not be able to provide a service to you anyway. At that point we'd be off. So we had to make the call. We're still in that transition and getting folks to safer locations. And joining me a little bit later on will be Olivia Vidal, familiar face from 7 News Sunrise. She's going to be back here with me and talking about her experience in evacuating here as well. She'll tell me a little bit about what it was like for her travel, so we'll hear from her. Let's talk about the storm, though, as you're making, again, the last-minute ditch effort to get to safe locations. And I'm going to be talking to meteorologist Zach Fardella as well about how, we're going to be talking about a point in time to where it's going to be too late to evacuate Lake Charles. And, if you are still in the area, as we mentioned earlier, your best bet is to go west. You do not want to, if you go north, you're going to be following trouble. If you like electricity, if you like air conditioning, if you like restaurants to eat at, your best option at this point would be to head toward San Antonio, Dallas, or Austin to get away from the direction this storm is moving. And I know that kind of goes against what we typically say with evacuations. You always say go north, which is your best option, but we're in a situation here to where the interstates are not to the point to where they can't handle the traffic out of Calcasieu and Cameron parishes. And so you've got the ability now to get to a safe place still, but the clock is ticking. I would say, if you haven't left by now, it's getting to be that window of time to where we're going to start to have big problems here trying to leave. And right now we have winds of 145 miles per hour. And of course this storm, while still considered a Category 4, is only, about 157 would be what we would be at for a Category 5. So we still have that possibility. This thing could come in as a Category 5 hurricane. Northwest push here at 15 miles per hour as the 4 o'clock advisory. So I'm going to put this into motion. You can see the track shift has not really occurred with this. It's still forecast to come across the Sabine River north into right across southwest Louisiana. That's going to put the storm surge right across our area here along Calcasieu Lake, up the Calcasieu Ship Channel, right into Lake Charles, and that's why the storm surge is going to be so amplified with this compared to storms past. The angle of approach is part of it, but it's going to also be making landfall. If you were watching our broadcast earlier today, I was harping on that we have high tide in Cameron at 1 a.m. You know, that's what we're looking at here as about the time this thing is moving ashore. So we've got the high tide to deal with. We have the fact that this is going to be possibly a Category 5. It's showing right now 150 mile per hour sustained winds as this rolls ashore. So this is a high-end Category 4 landfall as it moves ashore here in the next, well, it's 4:47. We're looking at a landfall closer to midnight here. We're looking at about 6-7 hours. We're going to be looking at the landfall of this storm. So as it moves toward the north, again, the right front quadrant, which is the quadrant of the storm that produces the storm surge flooding, that is going to be moving right up the Calcasieu Ship Channel, all the way up the Calcasieu River, places along the river, even into Moss Bluff, up to Topsy. Where it follows along the Calcasieu River, you're going to have substantial amounts of storm surge flooding, but even amplified more looking at what the forecast calls for with the Calcasieu River at the saltwater barrier. There was a historic flood that occurred there in 1956. The record was 13 feet for that particular flood. Unfortunately, that was a year before Hurricane Audrey, so I don't really recollect a whole lot about that particular event. I'm not familiar. I even talked with the hydrologist at the Weather Service. I don't have a lot of information on what that did for water in the downtown area, but I can tell you at that height, when you're talking about the saltwater barrier having a storm, a flood stage of about 4 feet, that's going to be a significant amount of water coming into Lake Charles and perhaps even the downtown area. So again, that's what we're looking at as a possibility, and I've got meteorologist Zach Fradella here as well, finally making it to air. Zach, you drove all the way from New Orleans to Lake Charles, and then I got in the car with you and we came to Baton Rouge.
It's been an adventure today, but you know, it's a significant situation for Southwest Louisiana. It's a serious situation, and I think people right now, you know, they probably need to know, can we get the radar up right now?
Oh yeah, let me pull that up.
Get the radar up, because if you were making that last minute decision that whether I should go, whether I should stay, you certainly shouldn't stay. You should certainly go, and we're going to look at the radar real quick, because right now you can see there is this window of opportunity for those folks that are still on the fence, which you should not be, but for those folks that still have yet to leave Lake Charles, we're talking Cameron Parish, I hope you left. Anybody in Calcasieu Parish that are still thinking about leaving, you need to go. And like Ben's been saying, go west. Don't exactly go east at this point, because you see all that weather east of the, or northeast of the center. Is it not?
Just double check it real quick.
All right, now you can probably hear me a little bit better.
And we're going to have a few bumps in the road,
Yeah.
so just bear with us.
Okay, so we're taking a look at radar, and I just wanted to say, if you are in Cameron Parish, you need to be out of Cameron Parish. There is no way that you could possibly ride out this storm in Cameron Parish. The water is going to inundate the entire parish. It's going to ride up just like it did with Rita, and probably a little bit more water than Rita. If you're along the I-10 corridor in Calcasieu, we're talking Lake Charles, Sulphur, Westlake, all of those locations, you need to get out. And if you're like I was mentioning a second ago, if you're still on the fence about leaving, you have about another 2 hours or so, because you see the storm system offshore at this point. It's going to continue to get closer and closer to the coast, but you have this window of opportunity where everything's going to be a little bit calm. If you've been outside, I know I just spoke to a couple of people that are following behind us to make it here to Baton Rouge. They said it's almost dead calm right now, and it's a very eerie feeling to think that there's a Category 4, 145 miles per hour storm offshore. But right now, there you can see the picture from the Calcasieu River Bridge. There's nothing going on. And in fact, it almost looks like there might be a little bit of sun trying to peek through there to provide a little bit of extra light. But that is going to be an interesting picture. Unfortunately, this is going to be a night landfall. Night landfalls, they bring even more problems because you can't see what's going on, and it makes it a little bit more terrifying. And I posted this earlier on my social media platforms. This is going to be one of the scariest nights of your life if you are going to stay and try and ride out 145 miles per hour Category 4. That is just the reality of the situation. If you're in Cameron Parish, Calcasieu Parish, Jeff Davis Parish, all the way to Jennings, this is going to be a significant wind event, not only at the coast, but all the way inland. Those of you that live along 171 going north to DeRidder, your Beauregard Parish, Vernon Parish, it's going to be like tornado-like winds when that eye wall, you can see that eye wall as it advances inland. This is getting to be during the middle of the night and then to early tomorrow morning. We could still have some winds, but the good news with this storm, it is moving very fast. So this is not going to sit around and dump a ton of rainfall across southwest Louisiana. The rain is probably the least of my concern with this entire storm. The storm is going to quickly be advancing inland, but you will have significant impacts for a few hours during the middle of the night, going into just after midnight along the coast and going through the overnight hours. Now here's a look at the radar right now, and I would just want to point out, look how clean it is along I-10. So if you're trying to get out right now, yes, there's a lot of tornado warnings near Baton Rouge and New Orleans, but that is far east. If you're trying to get out, get in the car, get on I-10, and go west. Go towards Houston. Houston is not going to see significant impacts from the storm. If you need to get farther than Houston, if those hotel rooms are booked up, keep going west. Go towards all the way to San Antonio or Austin, but you do not want to be in the southwestern corner of the state of Louisiana as the storm gets poised to make landfall. Let me show you some of the surge potential. And what's basically going to happen later tonight as the storm makes landfall is the water is going to advance so far inland that the Gulf is probably going to be to I-10 in a few spots. And it's hard to imagine that there's going to be that much water, but that is exactly what this storm is pushing inland. We're going to have 15 to 20 foot storm surge values as they across most of Cameron Parish will probably be inundated with multiple feet of water. And then every little nook and cranny that the Calcasieu River has, all that water is going to continue to advance up every little piece of waterway that goes through Calcasieu Parish, and that's why we're worried about multiple areas within Lake Charles flooding. So Ben, right now it looks like we have about another 2 to 3 hour window where the weather will be quiet in Lake Charles and along I-10 to get in the car and leave, and then it will be past that time and you will then have to deal with the Category 4 storm making landfall.
That's right. You know, we talked about that on the drive over here with Zach and I about, you know, discussing when we thought would be the time to tell people that it would be too late, you know, to evacuate. And that window of time is closing. We, you know, if you were listening to our broadcast earlier this morning, we said you probably want to be somewhere by 6 o'clock. You know, wherever you plan to stay, 6 o'clock. I think that's still a pretty good estimate.
We're approaching 5 o'clock now, so you might be able to delay that to 7 o'clock. Now, here's the issue. If you're in Cameron Parish right now, your time is a lot shorter than that because the water is already advancing in Cameron Parish, and that is a problem. If you're along coastal regions, the water is going to come up faster than everybody else. I still think maybe to about 8 o'clock or 7 or 8 o'clock along I-10, if you need to get out, now is the time to do so, because after 8 o'clock, it's going to be you inside your home dealing with a Category 4 storm.
Yeah, high-end Category 4 storm. And for those of you who have heard the stories about what they went through with Rita, and, you know, people said that it was basically like, I've heard different descriptions about a war zone. It sounded like, I even had someone tell me it was almost like a 747 over their house for about 6-7 hours, you know.
Yeah, and that's actually that's an image right there of the Calcasieu River Bridge, because you can see the Lake Charles Beach right there on the right-hand side of your screen. So, look, we just made the drive as an evacuation pair of meteorologists coming from KPLC. So we just made this drive. There are some slowdowns along the way, but overall it is a smooth drive as you get out of Lake Charles, either going east or going west. Now I would advise more so going west because you can get out of the way of the storm a lot faster going west. The storm is not going to move that far west, and remember, west side of these storms is relatively weak usually. So once you get past Beaumont, you're going to get into much better weather, and you're going to get in some significantly better conditions. Even if you make it to Houston tonight and you can't go any farther, you will still have you will not have any major impacts from the storm, even as it makes landfall. Yeah, that's a look at our Westlake Skycam atop the Island Capri Casino here, part of the KPLC Skycam network, and you can see it looking off toward the east this afternoon. That like Zach said, this is a light traffic flow for our area. So does that mean everyone's evacuated? Or does that mean that people are still making that call and they're making those last-minute decisions? I know, you know, when we were on the air in Lake Charles, I had a couple people call me and said that, you know, we decided to get out of the area because you just told us to leave, so we've all of a sudden decided to leave. That window of time is closing, so if you have not left yet, we're in Baton Rouge. You know, we're already in Baton Rouge. We're in an area that we're not going to have to be succumbed to the type of catastrophic damage that you're going to have to deal with, and it's going to be a problem here. We're not talking about just having to endure
this type of wind and this type of surge, this is going to be human suffering could be an issue here. If you have any kind of an emergency, say you get injured in all of this, something flies and hits you and you have to have emergency services, it's not going to be available for you. You know, you're going to have to treat yourself the best way you can. Hopefully it's not anything too severe, but you're faced with these dilemmas. You know, what are you going to do if you have an emergency? What if you have a heart attack or you have some sort of emergency situation? Because everybody's tension is high right now. We're dealing with a COVID pandemic. Now we're dealing with the unthinkable type of hurricane in southwest Louisiana. So we're all dealing with some kind of stress in our lives right now. So this is, you know, something that's going to be added to it with this moving ashore. So limited to no help is going to be available for you. You're going to be dealing with power outages that last longer than what we saw for Hurricane Rita. Now, I had people tell me that we had power out for Rita, some people a month. That may be longer. A majority of our viewing area, and if you're watching us in Beauregard Parish, in Allen Parish, Jeff Davis Parish, Vernon Parish, you're on cooperatives. You have Beauregard Electric, you have Jeff Davis Electric, you have these cooperative energy systems that are run through rural areas covered with pine trees. And after Rita, we heard from Kay Fox yesterday at the OEP briefing about how after Rita, they had to basically rebuild the entire Beauregard Electric network from the ground up after Rita. It took them, you know, and trying to get it up in about 3 weeks. So that's what's going to happen again. We're going to have widespread power out everywhere in southwest Louisiana with the power of this storm, the terrain differences, you know, with trees coming down, even in our northern parishes, the piney Vernon Parish area. You're not necessarily sitting at home concerned about things like storm surge flooding because you're not going to have to worry about it in Vernon Parish. Obviously, you're not having those same impacts, but you're going to have to deal with, you know, no power. Stores are closed. You're not going to be able to go to the grocery store. You're not going to be able to go to McDonald's and to Starbucks on Friday after this all passes and get back to normal because there's a chance that, well, for number one, it may not be there. We don't even know what the situation could bring with this type of wind, Zach. You know, surge is a problem, but structural integrity of buildings, you know, we had some buildings that did collapse, roof collapses after Rita. With this type of wind moving in, this could cause even more prolonged restart to trying to get anything back to normal.
Yeah, and you know, I'm from New Orleans. I went through Hurricane Katrina, and this is that type of storm. Now, it's not going to push the wall of water that Katrina did, but the numbers are up there very close to the Katrina numbers. So, and you know, when you leave, they use the same wording in the National Hurricane Center. They use that same wording that places that you inhabited are probably not going to be recognizable after this. And that is why you need to leave, because you don't want to live through that later tonight. And yes, it'll be fast. It'll happen in a matter of hours, but the reality is you don't want to be there for that. And once you get to a point, it gets too late. And then we don't want you regretting your decision. And I don't want people thinking that, oh, well, you know, we abandoned, you know, Lake Charles. No. We're in a position now that we can stay with you throughout the duration of the storm. And if you're going to watch us in Lake Charles, north of I-10, if you have not evacuated and you're going to watch us on television, what you need to do is you need to download the KPLC weather app, because there's going to come a time where you're going to lose power and you are going to need to keep up with what's going on. Also on Facebook, the KPLC page, make sure you like that page, because that stream will continue to go. Whether we need to be broadcasting from Baton Rouge, whether we need to be broadcasting from Alexandria or New Orleans, all of these locations will keep power and be able to keep you informed. Yeah, digital platform is going to be the way to go. At some point, we're going to probably lose our transmitter. If water does encroach into our building, obviously, electronics-wise, we will be off the air. So if you're watching us on television, at some point in time, you know, the technology that we use to bring you the signal into your house right now, whether you're watching us on Suddenlink cable or whatever, you know, it's going to succumb to potential water, and that's the problem with this. But with the digital platform age, we can come to you from Baton Rouge and still be on the KPLC weather app, news app, and on our website. And you always hear this, that okay, with the storm coming, you run from the water, you hide from the wind. That's always true, except when the storm gets really, really, really strong. When you're talking catastrophic winds. I mean, look, along I-10 and south, that is the biggest threat area. That is where the water, look, it's very difficult to survive a 20-foot storm surge. Correct. It doesn't matter what type of environment you're in. It doesn't matter what type of building you're in. But once you deal with, okay, we don't have to worry about the surge flooding, okay, we got to worry about wind. Look, once you go to Lake Charles, Beauregard Parish, I mean, if this track goes straight north up that, up the Sabine, everybody in Southwest Louisiana is going to be in the right front quadrant of a 145 miles per hour Category 4 storm. That is wind you've never experienced before. You've never experienced close to that type of wind before. So if anybody's watching in Vernon Parish and Beauregard Parish at this time, you are going to be in for a significant wind event. And most of Southwest Louisiana will lose power, and the infrastructure of those power lines will be lost probably for maybe multiple weeks, especially the closer to the coast you get. And here's the actual wind field from the storm now. That orange area that covers much of South Louisiana, that's the tropical storm force winds. Remember, that's 39 miles per hour or greater. The hurricane force winds, they're close to the center. It's not a massive area of hurricane force winds, but those hurricane force winds are going to come right over Southwest Louisiana. In the core of this storm, the 145 miles per hour winds, possibly stronger wind gusts, that's going to move over the heart of Lake Charles. It's going to move over the heart of Sulphur, Westlake, Moss Bluff. I mean, I can name everybody in Calcasieu Parish. I can name everybody in Cameron Parish, everybody in Beauregard Parish and Vernon Parish, because tonight, after midnight, the wind is going to become so strong that it's going to be like a constant tornado for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And that is not something that you really want to experience.
No, definitely not. And of course, if this picture doesn't get your attention, I'm not sure what else we can say about this. I mean, this is
it has a perfect eye right now.
Yeah.
And all we can hope for at this point, and it's a small glimmer of hope, is that it's peaked in intensity right now, and as we go into later tonight, maybe it will weaken just a little bit. But the surge, it's there.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping that surge from Cameron Parish in the next 6 to 12 hours. And if it weakens, we're talking 10 miles per hour. You won't notice it. The storm will still be catastrophic for you.
Exactly. And of course, we're just hours away now from landfall. So if you are still making that decision to leave, the clock is ticking. The window of time is really ticking for you in Cameron Parish. We've made pleas to you all day about Cameron Parish. We were on the air this morning, and we talked with Dick Grimion with OSEP, and he said he had been in contact with Cameron Parish, OSEP, and had gotten word that a few people had planned to stay in Cameron Parish, and it was an all-out plea at that point. I don't know how I could have gotten the point across any clearer that you had to leave immediately. This was not something that you could sit around with this inundation that we're going to see with this storm surge. If you're from Cameron Parish and you know people that had gone through Audrey, you hear the stories about people clinging to refrigerators that had been washed inland with the storm surge, and then they wound up in a field somewhere holding onto a refrigerator. That is the type of situation we're going to be dealing with. I know after Rita, a lot of you built your homes higher, and you think that, well, during Rita, Holly Beach, you had a lot of shantytown homes that were built at ground level, and those were all erased basically as the storm surge goes down. Okay, here's a look just from a few minutes ago of downtown Lake Charles. Heed the warnings. That makes me feel good, folks. Hopefully that means you're out and watching this broadcast from another location. That's right at the corner of KPLC TV. It's hard to imagine that area could have 6 feet of water, as we move our way over the next few hours. I was talking to the hydrologist, too, earlier from the Weather Service, and he brought up a good point with me and says the peak of the storm surge is not going to be when those winds pick up. They may actually not get here until tomorrow. If you think about the way the water rise occurs with the surge and how it builds up the ship channel. So do not get that false sense that just as these strongest winds come in with the eye wall, that if you're not underwater at that point, there's still not some sort of surge impact that could come even after the winds subside. And he brought that up, and it never really dawned on me, but I guess that does make sense, right, Zach?
Let's get the her right here, which Graham, you can keep that up. Maybe put us up with it, and we could talk at the actual board right here. Let's bring the her up, and we can actually time you out through the night. For those of you that have made that really not a good decision of staying, we could time out the storm and where your impacts or what might be your impacts and the peak of the storm will be for you. If we can bring that a little bit full, Ben, maybe put it in play mode to where we can show a little bit.
I think you can put it full on air, correct? There you go.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Okay, so maybe back it up a little bit. Okay, right now the storm is still offshore. We're going to start to get some heavier rain bands by 9, 10, 11 o'clock tonight. We're going to start to get some stronger wind gusts along places south of Lake Charles, and then look around 1:30 in the morning. Just after midnight, we're approaching landfall. That is Holly Beach, Cameron, Grand Chenier. You will have 140 to possibly 150 miles per hour winds. You could see that northern eye wall moving into Cameron Parish. Now, for those of you a little bit west of the center, which is really not so much southwest Louisiana, it's Port Arthur, southeast Texas, they're going to have a northerly wind. So the surge might not be as bad for them, but this storm might come just left of the Calcasieu Pass and Calcasieu Lake. That is going to drive a storm surge right up Calcasieu Lake as it progresses inland. Now, this is getting to be about 4 in the morning. That's when the worst of the weather is going to be over Lake Charles. And then technically, Lake Charles might go calm, okay? They might get in the eye. And never, ever go and venture out during the eye. If you survive the first half of the storm, you never go out in the eye, because just as fast as that eye moves in, it's going to move out, and the winds totally shift directions from the opposite direction. So a lot of people that have been through hurricanes, they say, okay, the first part of the storm, the winds are persistent, it really starts to loosen a lot of objects. As soon as the winds change directions, which in Lake Charles is going to be about 6 in the morning, the winds are going to come out of the west. Now, here's the bad thing. Keep it right there. Yes, the southern side of the storm probably will be a little bit weaker. Tomorrow morning, the high tide at Lake Charles is at 6:05 in the morning. So you're going to have pushed that surge in, and then you're going to turn that wind due west. So downtown Lake Charles, that means that wind's going to be blowing from the casino right across Lake Charles, and it's going to inundate the downtown Lake Charles area, Lake Street. All of those locations right there along the lake are going to be inundated by a storm surge, not only from the water being pushed by the storm, but the fact that you're going to get a west wind as the storm passes you. That's what I'm worried about. Right at high tide, that west wind's going to push right across Lake Charles from the casino side or the Westlake side towards the Lake Charles side, and so there'll be significant water inundation along the lakefront. Like Ben has been saying, that could be upwards of 6 to 9 feet in many streets across the Lake Charles vicinity. So we've been saying, get out, and you still have that small, and it is a very small window right now to get out. And I'm glad when we were on our trip over here, we saw a lot of people on the interstate. I saw all their bags packed. I saw all their animals in the back. And, that's what you need to do. You need to throw the kids in the car. You need to throw the animals in the car. And you need to get on the road, because you will be 1,000 times safer.
That's right, and this is important to note that we talked about how the impacts would be strongest in the overnight with these winds, but it's a good point that Zach brings up as this thing comes ashore. He pointed out at 6:45 in the morning when those winds shift, so there may be a delayed response in when you see that flooding, especially into the city of Lake Charles. So don't get that false sense that if you've made it through midnight or if you've made it through 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because it could be either you're in the eye wall at that point and you're not seeing that wind shift as of yet. But I think this model may be underdoing it just a little bit on the precipitation side of things, but certainly with that wind shift and with those high tides coinciding there, as you mentioned, that's when surge problems could become a problem close to daybreak tomorrow. As the sun comes up, water is going to be coming up likely into the city of Lake Charles.
And those that actually live along Highway 165 right here, I know I'm not talking a lot about places that are a little bit off to the east, like Oberlin and Kinder, but you could see that the eye wall is going to be very close to them, and there you go. You'll have 130 miles per hour winds. That's going to be significant, wind damage. Go ahead.
We're going to pitch it now to reporter Matt Houston, who is atop the L'Auberge Casino in Lake Charles, and he is going to tell us about those conditions that you're seeing out there, Matt.
Guys, we want to walk you through. We left Holly Beach on the coast in Cameron Parish earlier this morning. Nobody was there. They'd all gotten out of Dodge over the last 2 days, spent the last week preparing. We saw lots of boarded up windows and folks moving their belongings and valuables out, headed north to get out of the area. Of course, that is the coast. That's where we expect things to be the absolute worst, where we're talking about storm surges nearing 20 feet, an all-timer that we expect Hurricane Laura to be. Then we headed north to Lake Charles, and that's where we are right now, settled into a hotel. We started to see rain sometime around 1 o'clock, and it was hard, heavy, and sideways, but then it stopped. Around 2:30, things dried up. Right now it is hot and humid, and it feels like somewhat of an average southwest Louisiana day after a little bit of rain, but we know that is going to change, and a clear sign, the water behind me, it's starting to ripple quite a bit and move fast. The birds are starting to leave the area as well, or at least stir a little bit all an indication that things are coming. I want to step out of the shot. I'm going to head this way and show you. This is the Interstate 210 bridge, and right now I see 1, 2, 3 cars on it, and that has been the case for most of the afternoon that we have been in the L'Auberge Casino parking garage, away from the elements, looking out on the Calcasieu River. Not a car, very few cars at least, on the Interstate 210 bridge right now, and it's the same story on the other side of the Calcasieu that you can't see, but I can see on the Interstate 10 bridge, where it's mostly just semi-trucks headed east and west in that direction, trying to get their cargo to where it's headed. But not a lot of traffic, and that is probably a good sign for now, because it indicates that people are getting to where they are going, or at least headed that way, and long gone out of the path of Hurricane Laura. And that's something that perhaps is maybe different from Hurricane Rita. We've seen that in the past. During Hurricane Rita, it was standstill traffic for some time as people were getting out of the Louisiana area. Not the case today, and we hope that that is an indication. Are not leaving. With the boards that we've seen on windows and so far the activity that we've seen around town, or even lack thereof, it would appear people are taking this storm seriously, and they should. Again, we're expecting lots of rain, lots of wind, potentially lots of damage, and of course perhaps a record storm surge along the coast and into Calcasieu Parish along the river. That's what we're watching right here as things start to really pick up. Again, no rain at the moment, but it is dark, and you can tell that something is blowing in. We saw tree trimming services cutting branches away from power lines later on this afternoon. One service and crew had actually come over from the Houston area trying to get those branches off of those lines to keep power stabilized, up and running for as long as possible, because we know that emergency services are going to be hard to come by when winds are, nearing 140 miles an hour or whatever they may be in the area. It's going to be too dangerous even for EMS workers, sheriff's deputies, to be out and about. So if you need help, you're not going to get it over the next few hours as Laura really reaches the Lake Charles area. That's certainly problematic if you've not already left. There is still time to go, but you need to start moving, and start moving quickly. But you're just not certain about what the power is going to be like. We expect that there will be widespread outages. You've heard your meteorologist here on KPLC talking about that for the majority of the day, that you should not expect or rely on electricity and power. If you've got a generator and you're planning to stay, that would be helpful. But for everybody else, it's more than likely you will not have power beginning at some point overnight, because if the rain looks like what we saw this afternoon, it wasn't a ton of wind at the time, enough to blow the rain sideways, but that was just the first outer band, the light stretch of rain that was really causing a lot of problems out in the streets and things like that. No flooding, but it was clearly heavy and enough to really soak your hair and make you uncomfortable. That was just the start, just the beginning. We expect that it will get heavier and heavier as the storm nears Louisiana's coast and moves on through up north, and then curves back over toward the eastern side of our country as it dissipates over the land. But this is where it's going to be most problematic, right here in southwest Louisiana, in between, we imagine, Intercoastal City and probably the Galveston area in southeast Texas, where things will get high, the water will be high, and that, of course, creates issues all around. Our sister station, as you're aware, KPLC, expecting several feet of water in their stations and studios downtown in Lake Charles, and that is partly why we are handling this for you right now, because they need to be safe. We're up about 20 feet off the ground. We expect, even with high storm surge, we'll still be able to look out over the water, but that might be something to look out for tomorrow. Right now, this water, I'm going to step out of the shot again and show you where the water is. Relatively low in the area, and of course higher than where we got when we got here in southwest Louisiana a couple of days ago. But right now it's moving quickly. We would imagine storm surge will push that up and into the banks here that you see, where the grass is green right now and lots of birds are perching along those bushes. You can imagine that things will get wet. The folks here at L'Auberge are preparing. They're moving loose things off of their balconies. We see some TV crews around, and that's probably the only people we're going to see for some time in the area, and for good reason, because people need to be getting out and going away, moving on to safer areas, safer land, staying with family, headed east or west. No matter the direction, the important thing is that you are not in the area. So we're going to keep our eye on things and keep you posted. I just felt the first drop of rain I've felt in some time. The wind blowing a little bit stronger right now, and We're going to watch out for that storm surge. We're going to watch out for potential debris and keep you posted on how things are going in Calcasieu as we watch Hurricane Laura bear down on this area of Louisiana. For now, I'm Matt Houston. Liz, we'll pitch it back to you.
Of course, he was saying that they were just getting those first drops of rain and starting to see the wind pick up, and that's what we've been telling folks. You waited too late. You got time now. It looks like the lake, Prion Lake there, looked like it was pretty calm.
It's calm, and it's weird to see that much calm. It's not. Now earlier when we were leaving, it was storming.
Right.
And then we had all those tornado warnings. But there is this window right now that you can see between Lake Charles, Lafayette, Houston. There is nothing going on radar. So if you were one of the last ones to leave, now is the time to go, because you will not run into much, if any, bad weather. But that gap is closing very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. And once we get to about 7 o'clock or so, these bands are going to start to move in, eventually hurricane gust, and that is the eye wall of Hurricane Laura. And that eye wall is what is going to be a very destructive eye wall that moves right into Cameron Parish and goes right up the Sabine. And if you're in that northeastern eye wall, the northern eye wall, there will be significant wind. It will be like a continuous tornado. It will not stop for 2 to 3 hours. If you're lucky enough to get inside the eye, you will have calm for probably maybe 30 minutes to an hour, but it's moving so fast, it's not going to last long. And like I mentioned before, those west winds on the other side, that's what does a lot of damage, because you're blowing something over like this continuously, and then you blow it the other way. That's usually where a lot of damage is done.
That's right. And earlier, if you were making those plans to evacuate a little bit earlier, we had a pretty angry outer band move through, and it's the one that's still producing some tornado warnings, it looks like, here across the southeastern part of the state and even up north of Alexandria. That's a pretty angry band. That's what moved through earlier today as we were leaving the station, and we even had reports of that band even creating some wind damage over in Sulphur. And so that just shows you the power of these bands of tropical activity that can bring, and we're going to have more and more of these moving on in tonight. You can see all of them confined mainly to the central core of the storm. There's a big gap between band number 1, which is good, and what's coming our way, which is not good. So you got that time right now to still make that evacuation. I would say probably, we talked about, what are you saying, 7 o'clock or so, maybe 8 at the latest?
7, 8 o'clock at the latest, because also another thing, nighttime. You don't want to be driving at night when you start to have these bands come in. And we keep saying, I know we went east to Baton Rouge, but honestly, go west, because Houston's probably not going to get much. You can see, the west side of the storm is not very big. It is very skinny. So if you get to Houston, you'll be just all right. Now, if you go east, we went all the way to Baton Rouge, but look at all these tornado warnings that keep popping. If you want to avoid any bad weather whatsoever, 0 power outages, go west towards Houston. On the other side of Houston, you will be just fine. If you go east, you have to go farther, so therefore more of these bands could impact your drive if you're actually leaving right now.
Yeah, and you may be thinking you may not want to go to Houston because we're in a COVID pandemic, and you may want to go somewhere where it's not quite as populated with people. There's a lot of people that probably went to Houston. You've got plenty of chance to go anywhere you want here. You can go to San Antonio, you can go to Austin. That's a nice city. You can check that one out. Waco. Really any of these places. Dallas, I mean, there's opportunities for you to get out of harm's way, and you don't have to go far to get out of that portion of the storm that's going to bring the catastrophic storm surge, the things we've talked about that are going to be life-threatening. It's really just right here, moving into southwest Louisiana. And unfortunately, we showed you that hurricane force wind map earlier that showed you the hurricane force winds, and the size of that basically is going to encompass our viewing area. I mean, that entire hurricane force wind field is going to cover you. Cameron Parish, we cover Jeff Davis, Calcasieu, Allen, Beauregard, and Vernon parishes, and that wind field is about the size of our television market. So it's going to move right over all of you. So if you've made that decision to stay and you're in DeRidder, I know I talked to a friend of mine that lives in DeRidder, and they have decided to evacuate. Good job listening to that potential, because you may not be concerned obviously about storm surge and that type of thing the farther north you go, because there's a sharp gradient in the elevation in our part of the state from north to south across our viewing area. Obviously, if you're in Vernon Parish, you've got plenty of elevation there to not have to worry about the storm surge. But it's the other hazards that we brought up that are going to make life difficult for all of our viewers in southwest Louisiana with the amount of wind damage that this storm is going to bring. But it's the surge. I can't stress it enough, especially if you're in being one of those cavaliers who thinks that they're going to ride this out. It is not going to work in your favor, and you're going to, let's just face it, potentially die in this storm. It's a likelihood that you will not survive if you stay in Cameron Parish. So, this is a life-death situation. It's a decision you're going to have to make quickly, though, if you are in that area and still hinging on the idea of evacuations. And again, we're in Baton Rouge currently at our sister station WAFB, and they've been so gracious to allow us to take over their newsroom and digital department here to continue our broadcast with this very important information that we have to pass along in these very critical moments that you still have. And you know, the opportunity is fleeting. If you're not taking this time to get to a safe place, then you certainly are, you're just letting, you're taking a gamble with your life. You're taking a gamble with your family. You're taking a gamble with your friends. If you're just trying to play the cards here and thinking that you're going to ride this out, you're going to regret it, and you're going to be stuck there for quite a while, perhaps without any way to get in or out. You could have problems for quite some time, because you know we're not sure what's going to happen here with the type of damage we could be seeing, nor are we sure. You're looking toward the industries there, and that too concerns me a little bit. I will say these plants, they have obviously very strict shutdown procedures. I'm sure they've all taken those proper precautions. Very, very good contingency plans on how they shut down. We're not seeing that typical type of flaring. We had a lot of flaring earlier this morning. I'm sure a lot of that was due to some shutdown processes that were going on, at least for some. Now, there are going to be things that go on at those plants to keep them at a safe state. So, you know, that concern is always there. But again, looking off towards some of the industries now, off toward I-210 there west, you're looking towards Sulphur right now. So this is looking atop the Golden Nugget. This is our South Lake Charles Sky Cam. You're looking at the I-210 Preon Lake Bridge, and I'm going to bring up now. Why don't we bring up Olivia Vidal here to talk a little bit about her experience on the drive over. You were not too far behind us, Olivia. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Ben. And I want to make a point that we did not abandon the folks in Lake Charles. This was something that was very necessary for us to get out for our own safety after your recommendations and other meteorologist recommendations. We do have crews on the ground still. I know John Bridges, I just got off the phone with him. He and Rhonda Kitchens are both staying in the Lake Charles area. They will be following Sulphur Police around town on the ground, kind of getting reports there and reporting them back to us. And I know Jillian Corder and Brady Raynard will be with the Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office on the ground with them as well. They have those high water vehicles. They're able to navigate in all those different neighborhoods and communities that typically see water. So they'll be able to send information back to us, and we'll be able to relay it back to you guys. And we'll also get video and pictures as well of what your neighborhoods look like. So we're here in Baton Rouge reporting the news back to you guys, but also we have folks on the ground in Southwest Louisiana. And you mentioned the industries, and I want to give a shout out.
That's why I brought up Olivia. I knew she could help me out with this.
I did a little stint at Westlake Chemical, but I want to give a shout out to all the folks who are bunkered down in the control rooms there in the industries across Southwest Louisiana. They have those protocols in place. They know what they're doing. They're smart people, and they are going to help keep our region safe by being there. Yes, it's not safe for people to stay in that region. Get out while you can, but these folks at these industries will be sure to keep our areas safe by being inside those facilities. Yeah,
you can't you can't leave that.
No,
there has to be people there. They're going to keep this at a safe, but at a safe operational period at this time. But you know, that's good to hear, because you know that does concern folks, especially after what we saw with Hurricane Harvey and some of the problems that there were over in southeast Texas and in those areas. There was some of the fires and things like that.
Hopefully we can prevent those things from happening by keeping those people there in the facilities. And you mentioned how quick things can change. You know, we were right behind each other on the way here to Baton Rouge, and it was a pretty calm afternoon for the most part until that band came in and started pouring down in Lake Charles.
That was the angry band that's all the way now up into central Louisiana. That just shows you the power that this storm already has well outside the center. But as Zach and I was saying, there's a big gap now between when that rain starts. It looks like the rains are starting to arrive down around Grand Chenier. That's down in the southeastern part of Cameron Parish. We'll see if we can zoom it in a little bit here. This is you're probably seeing those winds there pick up as well in the southeastern part of Cameron Parish. Those are some of the bands associated with some of the more central core of this. So conditions are about to really go downhill for you in Cameron. That's why we said the clock is ticking. I don't have any sort of visual, unfortunately, to show you what's going on in Cameron, but I can only imagine it's probably a little bit breezier there. But here's what I want to draw your attention to, and as you look at this radar image here, for those of you who may live in Lake Charles, but we've had a populace move into our community who have not gone through a major hurricane. It's been since 2005 since we dealt with Hurricane Rita. That was actually the last major hurricane to hit the state of Louisiana, if you want to go by classification, Category 3 or greater. Well, this is going to come in stronger. And talking with Zach on the way on the right over here, I don't think we've had a Category 5 on record hit our state, and we're going to be coming close to that. This is Calcasieu Lake. I was just out there a few weekends ago with a good buddy of mine, and we were fishing in Hackberry. It was beautiful. And I'm so glad I got that opportunity, you know, this during this pandemic, doing all this social distancing and things. And I got to enjoy a lot of the beauty of Cameron Parish over these past several weekends. But again, this is Calcasieu Lake. It's attached to the Gulf of Mexico. It's a central line which goes all the way up to Lake Charles. I mean, look at this. This is the ship channel. This is the waterway where ships travel, and this is all connected to the Gulf. They get to Lake Charles via this route, which is a waterway all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. So Lake Charles is considered a coastal community. Because of that, we have the same coastal impacts to some degree that you have even if you live in Cameron Parish along the coastline. Now, the surge will be amplified as you go inland, and this is all going to do with a lot that we talked about earlier with the time of when this makes landfall tonight, coinciding with high tide. And a good point to kind of hone in on again is that as this storm does make landfall, this is something that a lot of people probably aren't thinking about. High tide tomorrow morning in Lake Charles at 6 o'clock. We're going to have that a wind shift out of the west around that time on the back side of the storm, and that's when you're likely going to have the water rise. It's not going to be initially, it's not going to be when that first part of the storm arrives, when you're getting lashed by those winds later on this evening. It's going to be as things appear to begin calming. That water is going to come up tomorrow into Lake Charles, and if we were to see any kind of inundation occur in Lake Charles along I-10, it's going to be around the time of high tide tomorrow morning as the daylight comes first thing tomorrow. And that could be a kind of a misnomer. People think that, well, we made it to sunrise, things are going to calm. You don't want to let your guard down until this system is out of here.
If you haven't evacuated from Cameron Parish or Calcasieu Parish yet, now is the time to do it before night falls. This morning, Ben, I don't know if you remember, we were supposed to speak with Cameron Parish OEP Director Danny Laverne about evacuation methods happening in Cameron Parish. He was too busy to even talk to us because he was trying to get
people out of there.
He was trying to get people out of there, and we talked to Mayor Nick Hunter of Lake Charles later on in the morning, and he was concerned that the number of people there were not enough people leaving the Lake Charles area to evacuate. So we really want to stress that leave if you can. You just head west, like Ben said, head to Houston, head to Austin. You can come as far east as Baton Rouge, maybe even into Mississippi or Alabama. The point is, get out, do it for your friends, do it for your family.
The good thing about Texas is big, and you got a lot of places to go.
Yes, it is big in Texas.
Yeah,
good point.
That's the safest place to go if you want. Like I mentioned, you could come to Baton Rouge. I mean, we're here now. We're not going to be experiencing, the catastrophic storm surge and the winds. Our primary concern over here is going to be tornadoes from the outer bands of this. I mean, our affiliate here, WAFB, is doing their own coverage with the tornado warnings that we have in the viewing area here. Yep. So this is a problem on these outer bands. But if you decide, say, you want to go to Alexandria, I mean, you're going to have the same problems as the storm moves inland. It's still going to be a Category 1 hurricane as it moves across Vernon Parish and Rapides Parish. So you're probably still going to have pretty extensive power outages. So what we're telling you is we're trying to get you to a location where you'll not have those problems with power outages and other issues that arise from the inland hazards associated with a hurricane.
It could be weeks before you get power back in that area. Like we've seen in Hurricane Rita, when it took almost a month and a half, a month maybe?
Right, almost a month, right, yeah. And so this could be longer. You know, we're talking with Kay Fox, you remember this morning, from Beauregard Electric, and she was on one of those OEP briefings and was discussing how after Rita, the entire Beauregard Electric cooperative system had to be rebuilt from the ground up. And so it took them, they were trying to rush this along in like 3 weeks. But this could be a repeat of that, unfortunately.
And it could be a test of the current system, too. We've seen Energy doing a lot with the utility posts around the Lake Charles community.
That's right.
Making them stronger, and we're going to see that play out for the storm if it holds up to it.
That's right. We were talking with our energy spokesperson earlier on Sunrise as well, and they were talking about the things they've done to the power grid since Rita. One of the reasons why the power was out so long for Rita was we had main transmission lines that failed, and that had to be rebuilt before we could get to things like neighborhood transformers and things like that. Right. So we had you had to borrow
energy from some of the chemical facilities in the area to repower the grid.
Yeah, and so that's one of the reasons why it took so long. Could this particular storm tax that system that's been reinforced? As we talked about with Entergy, they said they made a lot of reinforcements to the power grid since then. A lot of the things that they've done, I know in Lake Charles they've reinforced a lot of the power poles. They've replaced a lot of those wooden power poles with the metal ones that tend to be a little more reinforced. But you're still with a catastrophic storm. That's just one of the issues. Electricity is not our primary concern at this point. We know it's going to go out. It's going to be all the other things that go along with it. Winds of this strength, when you're talking about coming in with the right front quadrant of borderline Category 5 hurricane, you're still going to get catastrophic winds. I'm worried about my house.
Yeah.
I really, my house is boarded up. I live south of 210 off of Louisiana Avenue. I'm worried about the roof. That's what I'm worried about the most. And, that type of a wind event is going to create those concerns with roof failure, things like that on homes that may be well built. Obviously we have a lot of mobile homes in Lake Charles. We have a large community of people who live in mobile homes. And if you're watching this right now and you're still deciding in Lake Charles, we passed a few mobile homes earlier today as we were driving around. I know there's several of them, just for instance off Country Club Road as you go out by the Kroger. They're just scattered about through Lake Charles. And for people who especially are in those type of buildings, you have to evacuate. There is no, it really is not even a question at this point because of the wind. But at that point, surge could still be a problem, especially the farther south you go when you're talking about South Lake Charles out by the airport. A lot of people live in South Lake Charles. That's the area that people have been moving. And that's where that surge potential is going to exist as well.
And even during thunderstorms in that part of the parish, south of Calcasieu Parish, you see water gather in the streets, in yards, and it's almost impassable. Folks can't drive through it during a regular thunderstorm.
Yeah.
And if you live in Lake Charles, the drainage is an issue. And just passing through Lake Street, for example, or Ryan Street, the water puddles so bad on those streets quickly too that you really can't navigate through the community. So imagine what a potential Cat 5 hurricane is going to do to the streets of Lake Charles.
And that's a whole different kind of thing. That's water that's falling from the sky. That's rain. That's inland flooding, freshwater flooding. What this is going to be is a whole different animal with storm surge flooding. That's where the Gulf of Mexico pays you a visit. And that's what we're talking about here with the punch we could see with this storm surge moving inland, is that this is going to be the Gulf of Mexico coming into Cameron Parish, coming into Calcasieu Parish, and could potentially, make it into Lake Charles, I-10. And you can see right now, this is a high-resolution 3D satellite of the storm. And certainly right now, you can see with that enhanced view, just the sheer strength that this storm is bringing with it. And talking with meteorologist Zach Fradella, we talked about how the storm is really, really peaking right now. And, the most, if we were to grab on any sort of a string of hope out of this, is that perhaps it's slightly weaker, 145 miles per hour upon landfall. But from the way I see it, I doubt that happens because we're really closing in now on about 6-7 hours as this thing rolls ashore, and it's probably not going to weaken a whole lot. The Hurricane Center is still showing this thing moving ahead with the winds of 150 miles per hour. So, that's
two things I want to point out for viewers that are watching is you could see the turn starting to happen. Look at the latest plot from the National Hurricane Center.
Yes.
It's more north-northwest. Now look, these storms, they don't move in straight lines. They wobble back and forth, and so sometimes looks can be deceiving. But it does look like we're starting to see that turn happen where if it does move north-northwest from here on out, that's going to bring it right up Calcasieu Lake. And that's exactly where we've been talking about, maybe a little west of there, closer to the Sabine Pass. But I'm starting to get a sense that it's either going to be a landfall Holly Beach, a landfall Cameron, maybe as far east as Grand Chenier, but that's getting kind of far east. But we're starting to get to that point where you don't look at the models. You just look at this satellite. You look at radar.
Look at radar,
and I know you were pointing out if there is one glimmer of hope, and it really doesn't make a difference. Look, the storm probably won't make it to. The storm probably won't make it to a Category 5, but that should not make it. The difference between a weak Category 5 and a strong Category 4 is absolutely nothing. The destruction is going to be catastrophic across Southwest Louisiana. But one thing I want to point out here is there's a little hint that the wind shear that we've been talking about as it gets closer to the coast, the wind shear would pick up. If you look on the west side of that satellite right here, and I know it's a little bit harder to see when we come out like this, but there's a little bit of a squash going on this west side, which is a sign that maybe some of that wind shear is starting to try and nudge it a little bit and weaken it. It's not going to weaken dramatically. If it does, maybe 5 to 10 miles per hour. Again, there's absolutely no difference between a weak Category 5 and a strong Category 4. This storm will be significant. This will go down as one of the worst storms for Southwest Louisiana in its history.
And that's just some remnant energy from that old cutoff low that we talked about with Marco that was there, and it was ever so present. We had a big upper level trough that set over the Gulf of Mexico, and that's what steered Marco off more to the east. And then what happened was there's a little bit of that upper level energy. It's what's called a cutoff low. It's just kind of sitting over here, and so it's moving in and kind of combining with that and creating a little bit of that wind shear like Zach was talking about. But it's just not going to be enough to really overcome the power of this storm.
And it's too late. I mean,
yeah.
This storm is already pushing 15
already.
to 20 feet of water right now. If you imagine, can we switch to the radar here? I just want to show the radar. And if you look at this eye wall, there's 15 to 20 foot storm surge underneath this eye wall. And when it hits the coast, somewhere in Cameron Parish, it's going to come surging inland. And it's going to be right around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock along the coast. And then after midnight, it'll start to move inland. But there you go. You see the radar of Hurricane Laura, catastrophic hurricane. And I think you can see it a little bit better on radar right now, how you can almost watch the western edge of the storm is getting eroded just a little bit. And again, we're grasping at anything just to say maybe it's stopped its strengthening phase. It won't become a Cat 5, but still it's a Category 4, 145 miles per hour storm. Not many things will be left as far as, without damage. There's going to be significant damage across Southwest Louisiana from Cameron Parish, Jeff Davis, Calcasieu, all the way up through DeRidder. I know a lot of inland folks, you don't get included in these mandatory evacuations because you run from the water and hide from the wind, but here's the problem. This is a significant windstorm, and it's going to be moving so fast inland that what's going to happen is that wind is going to penetrate inland very quickly. So there's going to be 100-mile-per-hour winds in Reeves, Kinder, Oakdale, DeQuincy, all up 171, Maryville, DeRidder. I can name every city in Southwest Louisiana, all the way through Fort Polk, even farther north than that.
I mean, we could just call the roll and you're in it.
That's what we're saying. Just group them all together in Southwest Louisiana. There's going to be over 100 miles per hour winds in every single location. And 100 miles per hour winds, most people, including myself, have never experienced 100 miles per hour winds. And that's just the reality of the situation. It's going to be if you have chosen to stay, it's going to be one of the scariest nights of your life. But we'll be here with you the whole way, keeping you updated. And that's why right now you should probably be charging everything, making sure everything's charged. Make sure you got the KPLC weather app. Make sure you have your Facebook liked on KPLC, because we'll be streaming live on Facebook. We'll be streaming live on the weather app. Because you're going to lose power, you're going to lose cable signal, and those things are going to go away. And then there's also the instance that maybe the floodwaters make it into the studio in downtown Lake Charles of KPLC, and KPLC goes off the air, but we will not go off the digital platforms. That's not going to happen. So, right now, it is a dire situation across Southwest Louisiana, but the more you're listening and trying to think, oh, should I leave? You're losing time, and you're very quickly losing time to get out of town. If you're still on the fence right now, just get in the car and go west. Go to Houston, go west. You have another 2 hours of clean driving along the interstate, but that is quickly dwindling. If you're in Cameron Parish, your time is less. You have about 30 minutes, and even that water's starting to rise. So I would say definitely start going more west than east, because if you look, those bands off of Salt Point and Vermilion Parish, they're going to start coming inland towards Lafayette very shortly. So by the time you get to Lafayette, you could have some rough weather. So at this point, your escape route is I-10 west into Texas. Keep going, go past Beaumont, and get to Houston. You will have fine weather in Houston tomorrow. You will have no worries. You will not have to worry about power outages. You'll not have to worry about losing air conditioning.
Yeah.
But if you stay in Southwest Louisiana, you're going to lose power.
You're the luxuries we take for
You're going to lose water, and it's not going to just be for tomorrow. It's not going to be till Friday. It's not going to be just this weekend. It's probably going to be for a very, very long time. And there's a live look.
This is so deceiving. I mean, look at this.
Yeah,
the sun is out.
The sun is out in Southwest Louisiana, and you almost have to just be like, really? What's going to happen in 6 hours?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard
incredible
to imagine. We're going from sunshine here and looking at what's offshore on its way, about 100 miles off our coastline right now, and this is going to be moving in, in the next few hours. Conditions are going to rapidly deteriorate. And it's a good point that we brought up the deception part of this whole system, because it looks to me like the eye wall is going to pass over a good chunk of southwest Louisiana as well. That is deceiving as well. You're going to have a period of very quiet conditions as this eye wall moves over our viewing area. What's going to happen is the winds are going to calm, but that is a false sense of it's not over, because you're going to get lashed with the backside of this storm as it moves ashore, and it's going to not only be a quick transition, but a violent transition back to the winds. You're back into that most strongest part of the hurricane from calmness.
And the eye is going to be, I mean, there might be stars out in the middle of the eye. I mean, I don't know what the moon phase is tonight, but, you know, there's been other important factors to figure in rather than the moon phase, but the moon might be out tonight in the middle of the eye. Do not venture out in the eye, though, because it happens fast. And since the storm is moving so much faster, it's going to happen even quicker than normal hurricanes, where you go from absolute calm, which I do believe you're right. This eye of the storm is going to move right over the heart of southwest Louisiana, and there will be multiple locations in southwest Louisiana that go dead calm tonight. And don't venture out in the eye. You know, if you are in a situation at that point where you're in a structure that is seen significant damage and you don't feel like you can make it through the other side of the storm, that is about the only way you should get out of your house and go towards go to a more sturdy shelter. And I hope everybody is saying, you know, everybody has said, and let's just, I'm going to show you what this is. This is actually from Mark Sudduth, hurricanetrack.com. This is the, where exactly is this? This is Cameron. This is his Cameron. Now, Mark Sudduth is a good friend of mine, and he puts these remote cameras out there, and he can get the surge coming in. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be absolutely no power in Cameron very short, but look at the water that is already coming up on that camera.
It's Port Arthur.
Yeah, that's actually Port Arthur there. So he has multiple cameras that we can look at and watch the surge. The only issue is it's going to be in the middle of the night when that surge is the most intense. So since we're losing power in most of those locations, it's going to be hard to see much, but I can guarantee you some of the locations he told me he put his cameras, they are going to be submerged, and they're about 12 to 15 feet high. So if you can imagine right now, that the best one was that Cameron one that we're actually starting to see some of the water.
Yeah, you can see that's a Shell station there on Marshall Street near the Capital One Bank, and that's in Cameron again. Already, you know, an area that was devastated by Hurricane Rita has started to come back. And this is going to be, that view would be east of the Cameron Ferry, and again, an area that is not quite directly on the water.
There's Johnson Bayou.
Okay, there's Johnson Bayou. Okay, that's on the west side of Cameron Parish, over closer to Sabine Pass.
Yeah. He actually has the wind speeds on there right now, too. 28 miles per hour with gusts to 34. So it's still relatively, look, that's tranquil. You have a Category 5 Category 4 off the coast. Yeah. You still aren't seeing that big of wind gusts. That is actually Hackberry. So that's still water is not increasing all that dramatically yet. So that almost scares me even more because it's going to happen so fast later tonight.
I'm trying to see. It looks like where we went fishing a couple of weekends ago. And that's what's deceiving about it. I mean, look at things right now. It's so quiet. So you know what, Zach, that's a good sign, because that means if you're still there and you have made your mind up that you're not going to evacuate, but now we're putting out this sense of urgency that you need to leave, get out right now. I mean, the good thing is we don't see any cars there on Highway 82, so that's a good sign. More than likely, the evacuation has been completed in Cameron Parish. You know, I don't want anybody to die in the storm.
That's his camera on his. He has a camera in his car, and it looked like he's at.
That's important.
I don't know where that is.
Unless that may be near the.
It says vehicle cam Lake Charles.
You know what that looks like? The Golden Nugget.
Yeah.
That looks like the Golden Nugget where you go into the front there, where you park the valets there. That's where that is. So he's let's see, he's going to take off. All right, Mark.
Yeah, but usually he's not the one. He's not the type of storm chaser, and he's not really a storm chaser. He tries to collect this data with remote sensing.
Yeah,
and he leaves. He goes in. He'll come to he'll probably go to southeast Texas later tonight, to where he avoids the worst of the storm because all of the remote cameras and all of the remote anemometers are going to get that information for him, and he provides a lot of this information to the National Hurricane Center. And it's also great for us because you don't have to be there to see it. You don't have to. We can actually bring you these camera views throughout the night tonight, to where if you evacuated, you'll know exactly how much water is coming up through the overnight hours. Now, we probably won't see much because it's going to be at night, but
it's a rush tower right there.
Some locations, I think he does have a little bit of light, and you can actually I've actually watched some of these in other storms, and literally you can hear the water on the speaker a lot of times when the water gets so high that it actually gets over the camera.
Looks like he's using those Nest cameras, which they have the good night vision, on them. A lot of you
Yeah.
probably have those in your homes and things like that for security purposes, but you do get good visuals at night, and that's going to be an issue. We were talking about that because he does have one of those cameras down in Holly Beach, and that's where we're going to be seeing this move ashore. So at some point, it's going to get dark. So knowing that these cameras may be able to see something. Right now, it looks like he's on
He's
LaBerge Avenue.
Yeah.
It looks like he may be heading toward I-210, so that may be where he's headed next. He's on the exit road of the casino area. It looks like he may be heading out to Cove Lane Interchange there at 210. We'll see him coming up, probably about to maybe get on the 210 bridge. So let's watch him here as he travels.
And again, I mean, look at the weather. It's
Yeah.
absolutely fine. So you still have a very small window to leave Lake Charles if you are still, for some reason, not thinking this is going to be that bad. It is. Every meteorologist across the state right now is saying the same thing, that this is going to be one of the worst storms, if not the worst storm this state has ever seen before. And unfortunately, it's for all of our friends in Southwest Louisiana. And, there's really not much more to say other than, yes, there's sunshine right now. Get in the car, throw the kids in the car, throw the dogs and animals in the car, and leave. And go west, go to Houston, and find a hotel room somewhere. It's either past Houston. I don't know what the hotel rooms are like in Houston right now. I know Baton Rouge has gotten full. So don't go east, just go west now. You'll get out of the way of the storm quicker if you go west rather than you go east. And there's not many people on the road. So you have a perfect opportunity to get out very fast because there's not much traffic out there. And the weather is absolutely perfect right now to get on the road and go. You do not have to worry about any rain bands hitting you, especially if you're going west. But in about an hour or two, that's all going to change.
Yeah, this is looking out toward Westlake. Again, this is a view from, it looks like one of the DOTD cameras there, and it's looking toward PPG, Westlake. That's the Westlake exit there, and you can see virtually dead Interstate 10 right now. You can see they're looking off toward the west, and again, that's some of the industry there looking off into the top right-hand corner of your screen. And as we mentioned earlier, that is one of the concerns with living in an industrial area, is the safety around these plants and having to deal with a catastrophic hurricane. But you can rest assured those folks know what they're doing. These people have protocols in place, and they have the necessary staff to make sure that these operations continue safely, so that our area does not have to deal with that disaster as well if something were to happen. But again, looks like we're looking at a view from Hackberry, Zach. And,
near Hackberry.
Hackberry is, of course, in the northern part of Cameron Parish.
Yeah, you can see the flags off in the distance there. They're flapping, and the winds right now, they're only gusting to 10. So, really the coastline. Now, again, these anemometers are probably attached to something that could be interrupting that wind speed. But overall, it's pretty tranquil right now, and it's crazy to think. But there's a little bit more ominous shot from Johnson Bayou, and it says, well, it's just east of the Sabine, obviously.
That's the church
where
there in
Johnson
the
Bayou.
distance.
And that church, I'm not familiar with Johnson Bayou and the elevation, but that church looks like it might not be high enough.
No. That was the thing. People, they were like, hey, we built higher after Rita. Unfortunately, here's what you got to deal with. And you may not be, we're talking about these storm surge amounts, the storm surge totals with the storm. And you're hearing us, talk about numbers and things like that. But where this, you're not taking into perspective that there's the wind, there's the wave action on top of this storm surge. So not only are we talking about a water rise 10 to 15 feet, but then there's those destructive waves that are on top of that storm surge that cause the problems that destroy the integrity of those homes that are built up to perhaps that height. And then at that point, the structural integrity of the home is over with, and then it washes out into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's what people need to realize. You may think that, I built up high enough for that storm surge, but did you build up high enough for the storm surge and the destructive wave action that goes on top involved with the Category 4 hurricane? I doubt it.
All right, Graham, take us real quick, and we're going to show a little bit of update on the radar, because right now we are tracking Hurricane Laura approaching the coastline, the southwest Louisiana coastline, a major Category 4 storm, 145 miles per hour winds, and you can clearly see that eye still very concentric, still very large. There's not enough erosion on that radar to make me say, hey, it's getting into a weakening phase. That is not happening just yet. There are small signs to me that maybe, just maybe, as it nears the coast, it will weaken just a tad. But Again, the difference between 5 and 10 miles per hour at this point is absolutely nothing to you. You won't notice it. Yes, it might not make it to Category 5 status, but that really doesn't matter at this point because what's happening right now underneath that eye and in front of that eye, the wind's blowing so strong and there's such a pressure drop inside that eye that the wall of water, which we call storm surge, is pushing towards the Louisiana coastline. And as soon as that eye wall makes it to the coast, the water is going to rise rapidly. Very rapidly, and that is probably one of the biggest stories I hear from every hurricane I've followed. The water is fine, it's fine, and then it came up in seconds, and you don't even have time to react. So if you're one of those that are still watching us from one of those locations along the coastline, I would just say be prepared to get to an elevated floor of your home. And most of the coastline of Cameron Parish, they're stilted houses, but be prepared to get up very fast and the potential to get through the roof if the water gets that high. If you're in Lake Charles, same story. The water could rise very quickly in Lake Charles, all in Calcasieu Parish. You also, if you're going to stay in your home, be prepared to get high very quickly as that storm moves in. And I hope all across Southwest Louisiana, if you are in a mobile home, now is your time to leave. You should not be in a mobile home right now and try and ride out this storm. Now, we have some photos from Mark Sutter with Hurricane Track. He's showing Cameron at 12:08 on the left, and then almost 4 hours later, 3:50 on the right. So look at that. Okay, you can clearly see.
Some of that's probably from the rain bands that we had earlier because we did
yeah,
have
but
a
it was
pretty
totally
rough
dry.
rain band. Yeah,
it was totally dry 4 hours ago, and that seems like that's starting to be storm.
Water's coming up.
That's surge.
That's
yeah.
surge. Okay.
Now it's not drastic just yet. I mean, the water is coming up,
Right.
but it still hasn't made it into the parking lot of the gas station just yet. But look,
Oh yeah, it's
we're
definitely
still-
covering the sides of the road there and covering the road. It looks like.
We're hitting 6 o'clock right now. We're still, 6 hours away from the landfall of the storm. And like I've been mentioning, it's going to happen fast.
That was
It's
at
gonna-
3:50.
It's going to happen very fast. Yeah, so that's probably this. Well, we saw the images just a second ago.
Yeah.
But you can clearly see that center is getting closer, and there's really not much I can tell you other than it looks to be making the turn. So it's probably not going to make landfall in southeast Texas. Not that that would be a good thing, because most of southwest Louisiana would be in a right front quadrant of a significant hurricane.
How far do you think it's going to
But
turn, Zach? I mean, look at it right now.
It looks to be moving north-northwest. I mean, look, it could make the turn a little earlier, and honestly, if it did, it's a little bit better for some people and worse for others. If it does, say it moves due north from here, you're looking at a landfall closer to Grand Chenier, maybe a little east of there. That would put Lake Charles still in a significant windstorm, but Calcasieu Lake might get spared a little bit from the biggest surge. Now, look, we're sitting here and we're just talking about this. This doesn't mean, oh, it's missing. That is not what we're talking about. But Graham, if you want to bring us up real quick, I'm going to point out a few things here. But say this storm does make that turn and it does something like this. It's going to be a northwest quadrant of the hurricane that you're going to go through if you're in central Cameron Parish through Lake Charles. That's still going to produce significant wind damage. But this is what you want to avoid. That's going to be that strongest push of water. So if this eye goes just like that, that strongest push of water goes right up Calcasieu Lake. And that's what we've been concerned about. Yeah. And so if it does go a little east of there, it does help. But overall, again, we're trying to say anything at this point.
We're working with the turn right now. Yeah. So the turn is going to be critical here. And, if you were looking at model data, what stuff that we were looking at earlier, I was showing the HRRR model, and it was trying to, I think, definitely initialize the center a little bit more to the west of where it's located. So if it's making that turn right now, I don't think it's going to go a whole lot more to the west here. So, you take little things like this, little nuggets of hope when you start seeing that occur. But as Zach was saying, we're going to be seeing still the inner bands here of a major Category 4 hurricane move inland, and you're still going to, at some point, even if this thing does go just to the east, you're still going to be getting a turn in those winds eventually, so the surge is still going to be an issue, and even on the back side.
If it does go a little bit more east, just east of Calcasieu Lake, the Mermentau River, that is going to get the full brunt of the storm surge, so that water is going to surge up the Mermentau, so we're talking southern Jeff Davis Parish. You're going to have significant issues anyway, but just trying to figure out exactly who sees the greatest impact or who sees the greatest surge from the storm. But either way, everybody in southwest Louisiana from I-10 south, you are going to be inundated by water, and it could be in some instances very significant water that you've never seen. This is going to rival Rita. I don't think Audrey's not a good storm to use since it was so long ago, but this will certainly rival Rita and probably surpass it in the terms of damage and in terms of certainly the surge from Rita will not be as great as this surge will be.
Correct.
All right, and just a reminder, it's almost 6 o'clock now. The curfew in Calcasieu Parish does start at 7 o'clock. So if you're going to be leaving your home to evacuate, now is the time. We don't know why you're still hanging around in Calcasieu Parish, in Cameron Parish. Time to leave is now. Again, curfew begins in 1 hour. So pack up your belongings, get out of town.
Yeah, it's a life or death decision that you have to make at this point in time. And we've been talking earlier with Zach and I about the critical juncture that you have to make that last ditch effort to get out of areas. We already saw those pictures of even earlier this afternoon. Some of the surge is already coming up into Cameron Parish there at the 3 o'clock hour from those pictures that we had from Mark Sutta's cameras. But, you still have time if you're in Lake Charles. I mean, we showed the Skycam eerily quiet with the sun out right now, and that is certainly deceiving. And we don't want you to think that we need to relax things. And I don't want to focus too much on this possibility of a turn at this point, because it still may go a little more east than some of the models are showing. But we're still going to be seeing very, very devastating impacts to our coastline, be it maybe more east of Calcasieu Lake where this thing brings the right front quadrant, or if it does decide to wobble back to the left. That's the problem with these storms. As they get closer to land, they have a tendency to zigzag in slight 10, 15, 20-mile increments, and that could be a big difference in the storm surge, as we talked about, but we're not confident enough that that's going to be the case, that it continues on that turn and moves a little more to the east. So we got to still be taking this storm very seriously.
Ben, I was reading some of the comments on the live feed right now, and we have folks who are watching from all over the country right now, some as far as Tennessee, and they're wondering, what's happening in their hometown. One person commented, they're from DeRidder, they're from Maryville. I know it's just impacting the coast right now, but what are they expecting right now in Beauregard Parish?
Well, we talked about that earlier. This is actually just blocks from our studio. Is this live right now? So this is live in downtown Lake Charles. You're looking at the Capital One Tower there, Chase Bank there on the right, and you're coming up on the interchange here of where you would turn left to go onto I-10 there if you're coming away from downtown. There's the Wendy's there on the corner, and KPLC Studios a couple of blocks to the right. If you look to your left, you would see Lake Charles at this juncture. So it's hard to imagine the possibility of there being water 6 to maybe 9 feet covering this area that did not experience flooding during Rita. And that's the thing about it. People are trying to use that as a benchmark, and I still hear it all the time.
I was talking to you about that this morning.
Yeah, I hear it all the time that there's this mentality in Lake Charles that Rita was a worst case scenario, and that is not the case. We had a storm with Rita that was a Category 5. It was on that list of storms of the strongest intensity in the Gulf of Mexico, the lowest pressure. There's things that will go down. But let's talk about Rita. It weakened as it was moving inland. It had already peaked in intensity as it was coming in 15 years ago, about a month from now, a month away to the 15-year anniversary of Rita. He's going into the Capital One Tower. In fact, I tried to park my car there earlier, and I was having some difficulties. I hope he gets in. But that is an area where you would have that wind protection. Now, if he gets up high enough, then obviously the surge won't be a problem. My car is currently parked in the Christus St. Patrick's Hospital garage. I'm up on about the 3rd floor of that. So. Yeah. But that's Mark Sudduth, and he's doing a fantastic job at giving us visuals. Yes, coming up at 6 o'clock, we're going to have Governor John Bel Edwards talking about this situation. So once we get that word that news conference begins, we're going to actually go to that. So if you guys can just give me some sort of cue as to when we need to pitch to that press conference with the governor, we will be joining that to get some information. But we're going to take the moments that we have with you to talk about this critical juncture that you have to still make that last-minute ditch effort to get out of Southwest Louisiana.
Curfew begins at 7 o'clock in Calcasieu Parish and will last until 6 a.m. tomorrow. So keep that in mind. Curfew, 7 o'clock tonight. You got 1 hour and will last till 6 in the morning.
That's right. And, if you're waiting until, maybe, because Zach and I talked about it, if you waited until 7 o'clock to leave, you still could technically get out safely. So, if you're just one of those people who is dead determined to wait to the last minute, I don't think somebody's going to pull you over if you hop onto I-10 at 7 o'clock and get out at Lake Charles. But that's really, it coincides with the curfew, but it also coincides with the critical juncture of the last moments that you're going to have to safely evacuate your family, your pets, your friends that may be waiting until that last minute. And there's a look at our South Lake Charles Skycam atop the Golden Nugget looking toward I-210 and the industries there toward the west. And you can still see how ominously, eerily quiet it is right now. And that's what is certainly a deceiving picture here, because this looks like what I show you in the mornings on sunrise, looking out at our South Lake Charles Skycam. Not much to see here at the moment, but here in just a matter of a few hours, that's all going to change. So, you know, here it is on the radar picture again, and you guys, you can tell me when the governor begins, and we'll toss to him. Looks like we're still waiting on that news conference at 6 o'clock.
So you're saying these parishes like Beauregard Parish, Allen Parish, it's pretty quiet right now, right?
Yes. So the impacts are going to be different. They're going to be substantial. We're not talking about a storm surge for you in Beauregard, Allen, Vernon parishes. We're talking about catastrophic winds that are going to take out your pine trees. More forested areas as you move up closer to the Kisatchie and those places that are heavily forested in the northern part of our viewing area. Those trees are going to cause power outages. Power lines are going to come down. Roads are going to become blocked. So you're looking at a whole different list of things, of reasons why you don't want to be in that area either. Now, you're not talking about life-threatening storm surge, obviously. You could have flash flooding. You could have issues with that because we're talking about a 10 to 15 inch rainfall that we get with this storm outside of the surge itself. So you have the surge, you have the rainfall totals added to the top of that, which will obviously compound things for Lake Charles. We had a squall move through the station as we were leaving. We started to have some street flooding right outside of our building with the downpour. So consider that when you're already dealing with surge that pushes the water from being able to drain from our drainage systems. Because if you think about it, we have a gravity drainage system in Lake Charles. We hear about it all the time. We have problems with flooding because of how our network is set up. It's antiquated. I know they're doing a lot of work on it with the mayor. They put a lot of effort, into bettering our drainage situation in Lake Charles.
We talked about this earlier, with just a normal thunderstorm and a normal day in Lake Charles, the streets flood. We've seen that. You can't even pass through some neighborhoods in Lake Charles because of the street flooding. So imagine what this storm is going to do. Right,
and when you're working against gravity here. So with a gravity drainage system, once the outlets and those coulees and bayous become backed up, the water is not going to be able to drain out into Lake Charles, into these places where the water goes in a thunderstorm on a normal day. So you consider that if you pick up 5 to 10 inches of rain, it's really going to have nowhere to go when you're talking about like Contraband Bayou, places that we use as drainage to get the water away from the city. We're going to be having that compounded with the storm surge and that influx of water as the Gulf of Mexico meets those areas in Cameron Parish and all the way up to possibly I-10. And just to reiterate things, the surge potential, if we were to see that right front quadrant move directly over southwest Louisiana, the surge problems may not occur, or at least the highest level of water, until possibly tomorrow morning in Lake Charles. So don't think that if you've made it past midnight or 3 a.m. that we're not dealing with those impacts. So
one more thing for folks who are just tuning in, KPLC did not abandon you. We have folks on the ground there right now. We have Rhonda Kitchens and John Bridges. They'll be with Sulphur Police Department over there and just kind of monitoring what's going on in that area of southwest Louisiana. And then over in Lake Charles area and throughout Calcasieu Parish, Jillian Porter and Brady Reynard will be with the Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office on the ground with them in the high water vehicles when things start to get rough, sending back information to us here in Baton Rouge, and we will relay it back to you
That's
guys.
right. It was the best use of our resources to come to a location that we could continue relaying this emergency information to you, because you guys are depending on us to be able to be a mouthpiece for you while you're away from your home. If we were to have stayed at our facilities on Division Street in Lake Charles, there was a chance that we could take water up to 6 feet into our building. So at that point in time, we would lose our broadcasting capabilities. We would be technically off the air. We would not be able to provide you with anything. We would be stuck with trying to get ourselves to safety at that point.
And we're at your service here in Baton Rouge. Feel free to reach out to any one of us on Facebook. Send us a message. What are your questions? What are your concerns? What would you like to know about your area? And we will try to reach out to the appropriate authorities and get you those answers.
That's right. And coming up here in just a few minutes, we're going to be joining a news conference with Governor John Bel Edwards. Maybe not. Okay, well, if that does change, we will be sending that your way.
But Zach step back
yeah,
in.
Zach's going to come because it may actually be a good thing that we're not going to hear from the governor, and I'll tell you why. We need this time to reinforce that we are now less than an hour away from a curfew. Now, I know Olivia was harping on that a lot, but you know, if you get out of Lake Charles onto the interstate, they're not going to stop you from evacuating.
No.
You could still get out of Lake Charles maybe a little after 7 o'clock, but the time is ticking,
Yeah.
you know, quickly to make that
Yeah,
decision.
I think the curfew is just sort of an estimated time for, okay, we don't want people on the roads after this, but if you're getting on the interstate to get out of town, they're not going to stop you. You need to go. You know, there's no reason for you to stay at this point. You need to just go. And I keep looking at this radar, and there's not much to say other than this is going to impact Southwest Louisiana as a significant storm. It's going to be the most significant storm we could have seen in our lifetime, especially in South. I mean, everybody compares things to Rita. Remember, Rita was in 2005. It came right after Katrina in Southeast Louisiana. But this is stronger than Rita. No, Rita was a Cat 5 in the Gulf, but Rita was not a Cat 5 along the coast. It was a Cat 3, a weakening storm. And anytime a storm is weakening on as it moves up to the coast, there's a big difference in the wind gust that actually can penetrate inland. So if this sustains itself at 145 or maybe even 140 and it's not doing any significant weakening, we're going to have very intense wind gusts. You are going to maximize that 140 miles per hour wind as this storm comes inland, and that's the problem. Now, I did notice, I think this might rotate through to the camera in Cameron, and we showed that picture earlier side by side with Cameron. This is actually his vehicle cam. It looks like he's on top of a parking garage. Because you can see the KPLC tower right there in the distance, the Chase building. So he's on the top of some parking garage. But these are going to rotate through, and you're going to see the Cameron shot. Earlier, we showed a Cameron shot where it was dry at noon. At 3:30 or so, the water actually went up and covered the roadway down there in Cameron. And then actually right now, the live look shows the water went down a little bit. There's a reason why. We're at low tide right now. So the water did go down. Even though the surge is continuing to build along the coast, we're going in a lot low tide. I've checked all of the tides, and unfortunately for tonight, every high tide at every location coincides with the storm actually hitting land. So Cameron, the Calcasieu Pass, the Sabine Pass, Mermentau River, where it empties out into the Gulf of Mexico, all of those high tide times are right in the middle of the night. When is the storm going to make landfall? Just after midnight or right around midnight. So you can see how that surge is going to be totally maximized. And then Lake Charles is actually 6:05 tomorrow morning. That's when the high tide will hit Lake Charles. And so the storm has to move inland a little bit. So 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, the worst is going to be in Lake Charles. That is when high tide will be. So usually we can catch a break when we have going into low tide for a landfall. This is the exact opposite. A high tide is going to occur at the same time of a major Category 4 storm making landfall. That is going to maximize those tides. That is going to maximize that storm surge along the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see the latest plot there that it is trying that jog to the north-northwest. It's trying to make that turn, but still, these storms don't move in direct straight lines. They wobble around. They wobble left and right, and sometimes looks can be deceiving. They might wobble right, like it's doing right now. It's wobbling due north almost, but then in a little while it might wobble a little bit more left, and eventually it's going to make it to where that track says, which is almost right over Calcasieu Pass and then coming right up Calcasieu Lake.
That's right. This is from the 6 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and the pressure at 947. So it is still looking like the pressure drop is still, is occurring. Maybe
so
not
we're
quite
actually
as
getting
rapidly.
updates every hours, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, since usually we get 4 o'clock and then a 7 o'clock, but when a hurricane is making landfall, we get them every hour, and that's going to be something to watch. Pressure 947 hasn't moved. It hasn't gone any lower, and the winds are 145. So maybe that deepening phase we saw throughout the last night and today has stopped.
It's peaked.
And we could get a very little bit of weekend, but it is not going to change your impacts. This is going to be a catastrophic storm for all of Southwest Louisiana.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to probably come ashore between 145 and maybe 150 mile per hour winds, which is going to keep it a 4, but as we mentioned, you don't need but a few more miles per hour to make this a Category 5, and it's certainly not going to get much weaker if it does come down than it is right now. It's moving northwest about 15 miles per hour, so if you do the math, we're still looking at a landfall sometime closer to midnight, maybe a little after, but those impacts are going to be felt well before midnight. We're talking, in the next few hours, we're going to be talking about some big differences in how the weather is going to be for Lake Charles. And I think Zach's going to probably flip it back over to another view here. And again, that's the projected, okay, let's talk about the radar, because we are beginning to see some of the rain move into the coastal areas. You can see Cameron, but not only are we dealing with some rain, but very likely that we're already seeing that surge increase as well with this particular section of the storm moving inland. We showed you just how much that water had come up with the 3 o'clock view from Cameron over on Marshall Street there near the Shell station.
And ignore that tornado warning. That is actually north of Baton Rouge.
That's
but
for
it's,
Baton
you know, we're
Rouge,
using some of their graphics so it detects the Baton Rouge market rather than Southwest Louisiana. And I tried to get it off, but
that's okay.
I couldn't. But you could see we do not have any tornado warnings in Southwest Louisiana, so you have nothing to worry about.
I think a tornado warning is the least of our problem now anyway.
As the storm continues to move to the north, and you can see it's showing those signs that it's making that turn. It's certainly lost its due northwest motion, and it's moving more north-northwest. So we are going to see, we have about 6 hours or so, I think, till we get to landfall somewhere in Cameron Parish. There's no changes in that. It's going to impact Cameron Parish first, and I think all of Cameron Parish will be inundated with multiple feet of water.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, we were looking at that. We were trying to, you know, do the math to see if maybe the angle of approach here would put the center of this storm maybe a little more to the east of Calcasieu Lake and Cameron. We'll have to wait and see, but those impacts, regardless, are going to be catastrophic, regardless of what last-minute wobble we could get from this before it does make landfall.
So try and go to the HER and show you how it plays out.
Yeah, we're gonna pull up one of our computer models here, and in the meantime, do we have anything new from Mark over on the View? I know they're out right now trying to reposition some cameras before conditions just become impossible really for them to be doing that, and they're going to be safely doing that. We're going to, I think, send you over to our Westlake Sky Cam. This is atop the Isle of Capri there. Again, traffic is light. This is looking toward the east, and you're looking at the Yacht Club there. You're looking at the I-10 North Beach. Again, this is Lake Charles, which is essentially part of the Gulf of Mexico. All of this water and surge that we've been talking about is going to continue to build as we head through this evening. And obviously, this is going to be a whole lot worse than we are seeing right now. I've seen instances before where that entire area is basically submerged at one point. For instance, Tropical Storm Cindy. That was a tropical storm, and we had total inundation there of the Yacht Club of that area that you're looking at toward the center of your screen. So I can only imagine what this, unfortunately, it's going to be nighttime, and this particular camera, our Sky Cam, does not do well with night vision. Yeah.
I remember some of my times when I was in Southwest Louisiana, that view, even during the winter when we had a strong southerly flow ahead of a big cold front, that would inundate that. Now you're going to have 140 miles per hour winds moving up the Calcasieu Channel. You can see how that's really going to be inundated water. And you made a good point earlier. We could very well have water well across I-10 in Lake Charles. And it's multiple feet of water. And you can see Cameron in the top right corner of your screen right there. And you can actually see the water has gone down a little bit just because, remember, we're into low tide. So that's why it declined. But tonight, just after midnight, high tide is just after midnight, going to coincide with a major hurricane making landfall. So that storm surge is going to be maximized right there at Calcasieu Pass, into Calcasieu Lake, and all the way up through Lake Charles. And remember, Lake Charles goes all the way up through the Calcasieu River to the north. So if you live along the lake to the north, you could have significant water rises as the storm moves inland. Now here's the HER, and it's actually, this is a new data set because it's slowed down a little bit. You see it, this is, earlier we showed this, and by midnight, the storm was already inland a little bit. It was already making landfall. Now it's showing at midnight tonight, the storm is still not to the coast. So the eye wall still, technically the worst of the weather is still offshore. Okay, so let's put that in motion. Press that into motion real quick. And you can see we're going to progress through about 5 a.m. in the morning, and you can see how the storm moves right over Cameron Parish. And then, like we've been saying, the heart of Southwest Louisiana is going to take a direct hit. The heart of Southwest Louisiana is also going to get into the eye of this storm. Do not venture out in the eye. If you're one of those individuals that have stayed behind, the eye is going to come right after the worst of the weather, and it's going to go totally calm if you're in that eye. So places from Lake Charles to Vinton, Sulphur, farther north to DeQuincy, eventually the actual eye will come over you, and it will go totally calm after some of the worst weather, but you see that backside. That's also the eye wall as well, and when you get that backside, the wind direction changes 180 degrees, and so it comes from the total opposite direction. Here's the good news. This storm is moving fast. By 10 a.m. tomorrow, most of the weather moving into central Louisiana. Now our friends in Vernon, Beauregard parishes, it's gonna take a little bit longer for you to get rid of the weather, but by 10 to noon tomorrow, there probably will be sunshine breaking out across Southwest Louisiana. Now there still will be a breeze blowing but unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot of damage left behind that you will see in some areas of this southwestern Louisiana corner of the state. Could be unrecognizable, unfortunately.
High tide's coming up around 6 o'clock, like you mentioned, tomorrow morning for Lake Charles. And again, that may be also the time we're coinciding with some wind shifts, and also when we could be seeing the peak surge in Lake Charles. This may not occur until 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. So, this is going to be a prolonged event. You're going to deal first off with the impacts from the heavy rain and the winds associated with the storm. And then as it makes its inland push, even as you go through the eye wall and things calm and then you get lashed by the backside, after that is when we may actually see that surge amplified into Lake Charles. And that may not occur until maybe 6 or 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
We talked about how, 6:05 tomorrow morning, back this her up a little, one little notch. Let's back it up a little bit to where we get to about 6 o'clock in the morning, right there. Okay, so there you could see, look at Lake Charles. You might be in the eye around 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. That's also high tide. But in 15 to 30 minutes, about 6:30 to 6:45, that eye is going to move north, and you're going to get a due west wind. So you have high tide, you have storm surge on top of the high tide, and then you have a west wind that's going to blow from West Lake across Lake Charles into downtown Lake Charles. So everybody that lives in Lake Charles, the water is going to just slosh with that west wind right into the city, and that's probably a worst case scenario as far as maximizing that storm surge.
Yep. And I mentioned this earlier, what makes particularly concerning problems with southwest Louisiana's coastline is that we are actually one of the most vulnerable portions of the Gulf of Mexico to storm surge. And it's all about the lay of the land, how our slope of the coastline coincides with a very shallow slope. So when you have a storm of this magnitude coming ashore, it just makes the whole situation even more compounded when it comes to the surge, because we're already a very vulnerable area to storm surge flooding, even on what is a weaker system. And we've seen storm surge flooding in systems before from tropical storms and things like that have caused storm surge, like Tropical Storm Cindy, for instance. It caused a pretty good storm surge. And so this type of a system coming into our particular coastline is going to be even more severe because of that.
That's Galveston right there. So just showing you the waves, and we haven't even talked about the waves. You have storm surge, which is water on above ground level. Okay, basically it's the water rise, and then you have waves because you have 130, 140 miles per hour winds that are going to push those waves. I was seeing earlier on some of the buoys, 37, 40-foot waves offshore. Now those waves are not going to make it all the way to the coast because we have a shallow shelf, but you have
stirring things up.
Yeah, you have a lot of wind energy on top of a high surge. You're going to get big waves, and they're going to be, even in Lake Charles where the water is going to be so high, you're going to get big waves crossing the lake as we go into later tonight when the storm surge actually increases. And there's that radar, and again, ignore that tornado warning. That is for the Baton Rouge metro area that is far off to the east. But right now, if you're in eastern Cameron Parish, right along the coast, Cameron, Grand Chenier, all the way off to the west, closer to the Sabine Pass, the weather is about to deteriorate quick. And we're going to get tropical storm force conditions. And as soon as we get tropical storm force conditions, I think by 8 or 9 o'clock, they will become hurricane conditions. And then eventually those hurricane conditions will become catastrophic eye wall conditions, which are going to be like one big tornado. And you're going to go through that tornado probably for about 2 or 3 hours. You might get a break if you go through the eye, and then you're going to get more tornadic weather for the next hour or so. And then the storm will slowly wind down after that. But again, we all dread tornadoes. We're scared of tornadoes. That's exactly what this is, except
Giant.
it has a 25-mile wide eye, and it has a 50-mile wide tornado.
Let me put this back out, Zach. Tornado warning for this entire area. I mean, seriously, that's what we're talking about.
Tornado
on a grander scale.
Tornado
I'm just saying, though, you said the tornado warning is not for this area, but when you consider the impacts are going to be felt, that's essentially what we're dealing with.
Yeah, you might as well deal with it.
I'm just making a comparison here.
Well, and they will do that. When this storm gets to the coast, they're going to issue it's actually an eye wall wind warning, where it's basically a glorified tornado warning, where they're going to say in that warning, this is going to be like catastrophic winds of 140 miles per hour, and they're going to issue that when that eye wall, you see the eye wall, the worst part of the storm right around the eye, when that gets to the coastline, you're going to see the fact that they're going to issue one of those eye wall wind warnings, and it's a scary warning because it has some detailed information in there that shows some significant wind impacts, but And we're not even talking about the surge, we're just talking about the wind.
That's right. And our friends at the National Weather Service have actually evacuated their office, the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, which is located now near the Lake Charles Regional Airport, an area that likely will see quite a bit of storm surge flooding. So all of the warning data we're getting and backup are coming from neighboring offices in Texas. The radar system that we have is still operating there at the airport at this moment. Of course, all that's going to weigh on conditions and how they deteriorate, but we're still getting radar data from the Lake Charles Regional Radar, Airport radar down, and that's obviously you can see a very well-defined eye wall as it moves toward the coastline. But, you know, there may be a point in time where we lose this radar data. I'm just going to let you know it's probably not going to stay up through the duration of this event. Just knowing some of the communication structures that we have in Calcasieu Parish, things like that. At some point, we may lose this, but we still have satellite data. That's the good thing about the way we can look at things now from space. We have infrared satellites, so we're still going to be able to track the impacts because we already see what's going on here. This is a very intense storm, and there's no doubt about what the impacts are going to be regardless if we're looking at a radar view or a satellite view. So we're going to still be able to see where this goes, track it as it moves up through southwest Louisiana for the duration. Plus, we're going to be with you throughout this. So you know, we talked about not wanting to be taking a false sense when that eye wall, for instance, does move over your area. Well, we're going to be here to tell you that, you know, you may be getting some quiet conditions now, but you don't want to be heading outside.
And that's the,
that's
the reason why we're here.
Right,
not
to
in the
tell
KPLC
you that.
studios. Because
Right.
when the weather goes totally downhill in Lake Charles, we very well could have to disappear at that point, and we're not going to do that here. Yes, you might lose TV signal, you might lose power. You're going to have to switch to your digital platforms, but those digital platforms, the KPLC TV weather app, the KPLC TV app, the KPLC website, Facebook, on every digital platform will continue to stream this coverage, so you'll be able to watch whether you're evacuated or whether you're hunkered down in your house. You'll be able to watch very closely what's going on either from afar or actually in the storm.
Matt Houston standing by on Lake Charles.
Okay, 6:22 again on this evening. Watching KPLC TV Lake Charles. We're live from WAFB studios. We want to say a big thank you to our friends here in Baton Rouge for allowing us to basically take over their newsroom here to continue our broadcast as part of a family of networks of great television that we are proud to be a part of, and they have been beyond accommodating to us. And right now we're going to send it to one of the reporters who is in the field. This is Matt Houston, who is in Lake Charles, and with an update. Matt.
As we got here at our spot in the LaBerge Casino parking garage sometime between 3 and 4 o'clock. Since then, the wind has really started to kick up, though we haven't seen much rain yet. The skies are just a little bit grayer than when we first arrived, and you could kind of tell and feel that storm, Hurricane Laura, is getting just a little bit closer. Behind me right now, you're not going to be able to see very much wind action, but on the other side of the garage that you won't be able to see, the treetops are starting to blow a little bit as the storm moves in. I'm going to step out of the shot, and I want to point out this collection of poles right here. There's a bird perched atop it right now. We're kind of watching that to see where the water is. It hasn't moved that much since we've been here for the last 3.5 hours, but we expect that over the next couple of hours that water will rise as the storm surge moves in. You can see the waves kind of pushing quickly along out the Calcasieu River, headed out in that direction as the wind event starts to move things quickly. The clouds were moving pretty fast a while ago too, but right now things are rather still, and that seems to be kind of the calm before the storm, to use that cliche that you're probably tired of hearing, but that is the case right now. It's calm, it's pretty, there's a nice sunset, and we haven't had any rain since we got hard, sideways, heavy rain around from probably 1 o'clock until 2:30 or so, and that's kind of what we have seen up until this point as far as the weather is concerned. But things right now pretty calm, moving a little bit, but we anticipate that things will get dirtier as it goes. So as we watch that, we'll keep you posted and let you know as things change out here on the Calcasieu River between the port of Lake Charles and I-210, where there has been almost no traffic in the entire time we've been here. We hope that that is a good sign that people are already where they are headed, or at least well on their way. We certainly hope that it is not an indication that people are staying in Lake Charles. We hope that those people have moved and at least gone over a couple of days or left early. That's a difference between this storm and Hurricane Rita, which we've heard so many comparisons to. Back in 2005, we know that there was quite a bit of traffic and lots of people getting out of Dodge, stuck in traffic for hours as they headed north, west, and east to get away from that storm that slammed Louisiana's coast in the southwest. We want to get you to Governor John Bel Edwards, who's approaching the podium right now for his update. Let's get you there now.
Thank you, Matt, for that update. That's Matt Houston reporting live from LaBerge Casino in Lake Charles. And again, you can see the conditions very tranquil right now, what's going on in southwest Louisiana, but that is quickly going to change over the next 2 to 3 hours. We also have another live reporter from our Fox 8 affiliate. I'm from Fox 8. I'm a meteorologist at Fox 8. This is Rob Krieger. He's one of our reporters, the morning reporters from Fox 8 in New Orleans. He's live at LaBerge, but he's actually on the ground level. Rob, how is it looking out there?
Yeah, it's looking, fairly calm right now when you consider the fact that there is a hurricane approaching Lake Charles. I mean, you take a look behind me here on the ground level, you can see the water, just some slight wave action here. But the winds are really beginning to pick up here outside of LaBerge Casino. You can see it blowing some of the trees there. Now, of course, we wouldn't call this, any sort of extraordinary winds, but it certainly is the beginning of that tropical weather that we're expecting as Hurricane Laura continues to bear down on Cameron and Calcasieu parishes here in southwest Louisiana. Now, we've been following that storm now for multiple days, and I know the hurricane hunters were actually just flying through the hurricane. We heard wind speeds near that eye wall about 153 miles per hour. That is catastrophic wind speeds. Of course, it still is a Category 4. The Hurricane Center won't move it up, or they go in those increments of 5 miles per hour. So right now, still a Category 4 as it approaches Lake Charles and the southwestern tip of Louisiana. And I can tell you these winds are really blowing pretty hard. And I know we've been talking to several people throughout the day, our meteorologists there who are with y'all in the newsroom there in Baton Rouge, told us earlier today that we could see here, right here on the lake, water potentially as high as 10 to 12 feet if that surge does what some folks expect it could do as it swamps in through the southwestern portion of Louisiana here. So that's really the big concern for the folks that live in this area. Now, throughout the day, we really looked like a ghost town here in Lake Charles as we were driving in from New Orleans on that 3-hour drive. Not as much traffic as you'd expected with a mandatory evacuation. It seems like most people heeded that warning, got out yesterday. A few stragglers got out today, especially as they saw this storm begin to intensify and become a catastrophic, very, very scary storm for the folks here in this area. Certainly one that they have never seen in recorded history. So a lot of folks wondering what really could happen, especially with the not only the winds, but the storm surge, potential power outages, wind damage. We're talking tornadoes, flash flooding, everything under the sun that you could think of could be a hazard here in this area. So we're here staying at the LaBerge Casino throughout the night. Of course, we're going to continue to give you looks here of what it looks like in this area. We do expect that rain to start picking up here within an hour or so. I can tell you over the last 3 hours, it's been dry. The sun actually was peeking through the clouds, and if you were looking out the window and you didn't see or feel all this wind, you certainly might expect it to be a pretty decent day outside of the fact that there was a hurricane coming. Well, that's what we call the calm before the storm, because we know Laura is just south of us here, and she is coming in, and she is coming in fast. So we do expect those catastrophic flooding, the storm surge. We do expect the winds to pick up. We saw readings, as much as 70 miles an hour here in Lake Charles, of the sustained winds, something that we're going to continue to watch out for. That's been really the biggest concern for a lot of the folks in this area who just want to make sure that they're safe. It's why so many people got out of the way of the storm. And as we continue to track Laura, we'll learn a little bit more about the intensity The question is, will she intensify as she approaches the Louisiana coast, or will she begin to weaken? Obviously, everyone is hoping for the latter, but certainly something that we're going to have to continue to wait and watch for. If those intermediary advisories come out, and they'll give us some more information about what we can expect from Laura. And, of course, that 10 o'clock advisory should give us really that last big reading before that expected impact between 1 a.m., 2 a.m. this morning is when we expect it. But, when that landfall happens, that's the eye, that means a big portion of the storm is well over Louisiana already. So when you hear 1 a.m., that doesn't mean, hey, that's the time to leave. You should have been out a long time ago at this point. And you can see these winds are really beginning to pick it up. Here at L'Auberge Casino, they have battened down the hatches, as you would say. If you're familiar with the area, there's a lazy river and a pool over to the side. You can't see it from this shot here, but the workers here have taken all of the pool furniture and thrown it into the lazy river. They've thrown it into the pool to protect it from flying away. We'll see what happens if water does come over, if it starts floating away or whatnot. But all along this area, everything has been secured. Picnic tables have been chained down to fences in this area. They've moved all of the limos and golf carts and what have you from the casino property into the parking structure. Let's spin around right here. We'll give you just a look of L'Auberge Casino here and how they prepared. Just a single boat that's still lashed up here at that dockside outside of the casino there, but that parking structure, that's where you've seen Matt Houston earlier doing his live shots in that area. But in that parking structure, you can see how high up it is. That's where crews have placed out several of their vehicles, the casino's vehicles, even those limos, like I said, are in that parking garage right now so that they can hopefully avoid any potential surge. But where we stand right now on the beach, this is where we do expect to see potentially some surge here later on this evening. When that happens, exactly, really hard to tell at this point. It could happen as that eye comes in and continues to push in. But, it's not just this area that we're concerned about. All through the western portion of Louisiana, up through Alexandria, you've seen that track. You've seen the path of the storm. We've been showing it to you over and over. Everyone in that area, in that cone that's going through Louisiana, should be bracing for potential impacts, not only in that cone, but on the outsides of that cone. Because, as we know, the cone tells you where the eye is going to be. In this storm, well, it is large right now, and so it could expand those impacts, potential power outages all through Louisiana. That's something we're bracing for. Flash flooding, street flooding. You need to be prepared for this, even if you're not in these lower southwest parishes of Louisiana. It is something that you need to be ready to either get out of the way now or be prepared safely to ride this out. I know here at L'Auberge Casino, where we will be riding it out throughout the storm, we have several contingency plans in place in case something happens. But of course, we're going to continue to watch and monitor the situation out here as we expect Hurricane Laura, a catastrophic storm, one that the southwest coast of Louisiana has never seen before, is just hours away from impacting the coast of Louisiana. It's going to do it for us out here. Reporting live in Lake Charles, I'm Rob Krieger.
Rob Krieger reporting live. You can see he's actually on the beach at L'Auberge, and where he's standing right now, in about 6 to 7, 8 hours during the middle of the night, that will be underwater, and he will be underwater, so obviously he's going to get to higher ground in the L'Auberge Casino. But that was Rob Krieger from our Fox affiliate, WVUE in New Orleans, reporting live there. I just want to give you a quick weather update, and we might have some more interviews to talk about in a second, but here's the latest radar. You can see the eye wall of Hurricane Laura still very much intact. It is not really weakening all that much, but one thing I want to point out right now, Ben, is there's the eye. Seems to still be, it's wobbled north, but now it looks to be maybe wobbling again back west just a little bit. Now, go a little bit north, because we've talked about, okay, you had 1 to 2 hours if you were in Lake Charles, places along I-10 from Jeff Davis Parish to Calcasieu Parish. You had about 1 to 2 more hours before the weather really got bad. Well, here comes those bands, and this one doesn't look like a very intense band, but this is going to be the start of those tropical storm force conditions. It looks like light to moderate rain, but one thing about tropical rainfall, the raindrops are very small, and it pours even though the radar is not detecting very heavy squally weather. This is going to come with 40 to 50 miles per hour winds advancing on Lake Arthur. Cameron, you're probably already starting to feel some of that. So in the next hour, your time to leave is over with. If you are in Lake Charles and you are in portions that are under mandatory evacuation, you need to go now. If you're going to make that decision, there's no longer a chance to make that decision in an hour. There's no longer a chance to make that decision in 30 minutes. You need to leave right now, because this is the start of the tropical storm force conditions. And once they start, you do not want to be on the roadways, because things are going to get treacherous. Even when we drove over here earlier, we were not in tropical storm force conditions, but we got one rain band where we could not see 10 feet in front of the car. So in all reality, your chances for leaving are about the next 30 minutes. After that, it's over with. You're going to have to stay in your house. Don't try to leave your house during the middle of a storm. That is the worst thing you could possibly do. So that is something we need to, all folks that are still out there, that are still in these positions where they have mandatory evacuations, your time is now down to the last few minutes.
That's right. We did get word that Allen Parish has a dusk curfew, so that is what we're going to be dealing with there. What this is looking at the radar. This is reflectivity. What this does not show, though, is the water rise that's going on here as well. You know, we can look at those camera views that we see out there. This is what's going on in the atmosphere, but this doesn't show.
Graham, do we still have the hurricane track camera views, Graham?
From Mark?
Yeah.
From Mark, yeah.
Let's maybe put those up. Not that we're going to see much, but we're about to lose daylight. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So we're going to lose all of these feet. I mean, look at Cameron, top right corner. Look at the water. A second ago,
wow.
there was nothing in the middle of the street. You are now seeing that water quickly advancing into Cameron Parish right now. You can clearly see it's probably going up. It's hard to estimate with this type of camera view, but it's definitely 20 minutes ago we were looking at this, and there was no water in the middle of that street.
Right.
There looks to be at least a foot of water in that street. So it's over with. If you stayed in Cameron Parish, like I said, you're going to have to be ready to get as high as you can be during the middle of the storm, and you're not going to have a lot of time to do it because that water is going to come fast.
That's right. And what that's looking at, that's Marshall Street, Cameron, there toward the Shell Station, and very familiar area if you're driving through Cameron. And again, that water covering the road there, that's Marshall Street submerged. And that is only going to get worse. That's just the beginning of some of this water rise that will be dealt with as Hurricane Laura continues to move closer and closer to the coastline here in southwest Louisiana. Of course, these are several different camera views that Mark has of areas that we have. Looks like we've got one over in Port Arthur.
Yeah, there's
and
Johnson's Bayou in the bottom right-hand corner. Still no signs of water.
I was looking
but
to see
that
what
might
the
be
name
a
of
higher
church
point
is.
right there where that church is. Yeah, I don't know exactly where that church is in Johnson Bayou. But again, Johnson Bayou is a little bit farther off to the east, so it's a little bit it's a little bit farther off to the west. Excuse me. It's a little bit closer to the Sabine Pass, so they're a little bit farther away from the center of the storm than Cameron. So that is one location that might take a little bit longer to actually get that water inundation going. Graham, let's come back to the radar just for a second, and I could show you how the reason why that water is advancing on the Cameron coastline right now. That's those tropical storm force conditions, and they're pushing that water very fast into the Cameron coastline. And I would say in about an hour, here's the hurricane conditions right here. You can almost see because you're getting closer and closer to that center, which here's the devastation.
Yeah.
In this northern eye wall, this is where you're going to get 140 miles per hour winds. Some gusts could be even higher. And then you're going to get that push of water that could be in upwards of 20 feet high.
That's right, and that's what this radar view doesn't show, but that's what's going on underneath all of this reflectivity, basically, is what we're seeing here. So, and that is what you have to be prepared for. That is what is going to be the killer out of the storm. Is going to be the storm surge flooding that we see as this storm pushes its way closer to southwest Louisiana's coastline. So I believe we have we're going to, in a second, we're going to be joined here, I believe, with Sheriff Tony Mancuso. Olivia?
Yeah, I have Tony Mancuso, Calcasieu Parish Sheriff, on the phone with me right now. Tony, hey, thanks for speaking with us this afternoon. How are things going in Calcasieu Parish right now?
Right now, things are pretty calm, believe it or not. Winds are not what we expected yet, but we have been following the news and watching y'all, and we do understand that it's just a matter of, probably the next 30, 45 minutes, they should pick up significantly. So we're just waiting and kind of just seeing what happens now. This is kind of the point where we're getting close to that moment where we're just going to have to sit back and let Mother Nature do what it's going to do, and then head out in the morning and see what we can do to pick up the pieces.
Now, I know this morning you were kind of talking about how concerned you are with people not evacuating the area. Is that still a concern at this hour?
I think we're in much better shape now. I do think that a lot more people got out, which is, what we were hoping for. But I don't think. I do think there's still some people here that we wish, obviously would have left, but they're calling in now and wanting to leave, and they're kind of, there's no way they can get out now. There's no more evacuation plan for anybody that doesn't have their own means to get out. So we're taking those names and numbers, and we'll check on them when the storm passes. That's the best we can do now at that point. That's what I said when I made the comment. It breaks our heart. That's what our job is to protect them. And there gets to a point where your services are just limited at that point.
Sheriff, hey, it's Ben. What are you hearing about Cameron Parish? I know you guys are in connection with the Cameron Parish Sheriff's Office. Does it appear to you, what you can tell, most people in Cameron Parish have gotten out? Have you heard about any people that have said that they are not going to evacuate in Cameron?
I have not. I have not spoken to the sheriff in the last probably 8 or so hours.
Okay.
We have been in contact, and he did say people were leaving. He did not mention to me that there was people that were not getting out. So I really don't know that I know the answer to that. But I would hope they would have. They of all people for sure are in the greatest danger at this point.
Well, let's talk about the upcoming curfew at 7 p.m. What would you like folks in the Calcasieu Parish area know about that?
Well, we have taken a stance of a zero tolerance as far as people wandering and sightseeing and looking, and it's different if they have a specific job that they have to do, if they're a hospital worker, a plant worker, somebody in our industries, or emergency personnel that have to get out. But we're going to have to make sure that they understand that they are at risk of getting a ticket or going to jail.
Right.
It just depends on the circumstances. So,
well, let's talk about your crew. You guys are prepared. You've got high water vehicles and things of that nature ready to be deployed.
We do. We have our high water vehicles. We have 8 high water vehicles placed all across the parish. We have Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office will be here in the morning. And I say in the morning, as soon as they can get here, as soon as it's safe for them to get here. So we'll have National Guard men and women that we've asked for, requested. So we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to get to people tomorrow as soon as possible, as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe for us to do that, and safely, roam around the parish. If people remember, the problem is going to be down power lines, down trees, debris in the roadways, and that just takes time. And that's, when we say, it's going to take time to get to you, it's not that we don't want to get to you, it's we have to be able to physically maneuver our equipment safely around. So sometimes that's just very difficult. It's very challenging. So
now, Sheriff, I'm going to have you take off your sheriff's badge for a second. How are you feeling in this moment with the storm approaching landfall? How are you feeling?
Well, I got a lot of emotion. My family's away from me, and I'm concerned about them. They're safe. Of course, they're worried about me, and that concerns me, as any father would or parent would. But I'm fine. I mean, I have a lot of men and women that count on me. I have a community that counts on me, and it is concerning. You want to make sure we made all the right decisions. But I'm confident that we have the men and women at the sheriff's office that know exactly what to do. They have all the equipment and the technology to do their job, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to stand up tomorrow and do what we were paid to do. I guess the only thing that weighs heavy on me is when you make a statement to people, hey, look, if you don't get out, we're not going to be able to get to you. It weighs heavy on your heart. So we're anxious, just like anybody else. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of leaving. That's our job, to stay here and to try to right the ship. So that's what we're going to do. But I can't lie. I can't say we don't have butterflies. But this is what motivates us to do the job that we do also.
Hey, Sheriff, thank you so much for talking with us this afternoon. We appreciate all you guys are doing for the residents there in Calcasieu Parish and Cameron Parish as well. Stay safe, and we'll get through this. We'll be checking in with you, I guess, throughout the evening and into the morning hours. And just stay safe, and we'll get through this together, and we'll see you on the other side of it.
Absolutely. And listen, thank y'all, because if it wasn't for y'all getting the message out, I don't know that people would have done what they did. They did amazing, because it's been a hectic couple of days for everybody, stressful for everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody wants this, and the sad part is there's nothing we can do about it. We're just going to have to let Mother Nature do what she's going to do and deal with it. So.
That's right, Sheriff. It doesn't help matters that we're in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic on top of everything else. I mean, we have already had to deal with the stresses of what we've been dealing with for the past few months, and this just really compounds things. And, you know, that probably weighed into a lot of people's decisions to leave at the last minute. We're looking actually right now, I know we have that curfew coming up, Sheriff, but we're looking at the Skycams, I-10 bridge. There's not a lot of traffic, but it looks to me like if you were to, you know, you're listening to us talk right now, if you were to get in your car and head out on I-10 right now, you could still get to a safe location if you're on I-10. There's not a lot of traffic now, but Sheriff, you don't want to wait much longer, correct?
Absolutely. Your window of opportunity has really shrunk down to nothing, but you could right now safely get out. And again, it's not too late. In regards to COVID, basically, you know, yesterday we decided we just had to put COVID in the back of our minds and not even worry about that. We had to deal with this problem. So COVID's a thing of the past for at least right now. I don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks, but
we'll find
right
out.
now, yeah. So,
All right, Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us. Be safe. We'll be in touch soon.
thank you.
All right, bye-bye. That was Sheriff Tony Mancuso talking about their plans.
I believe meteorologist Zach Friedel is going to join us for another little update on the storm.
Yeah, and we actually just got the 7 a.m. advisory, and
7 p.m.
It's, 7 p.m. Sorry,
Oh, wow.
and it is stronger, 150 miles per hour, getting very close to Category 5 strength. And probably the biggest thing, remember last hour, 947 millibars on the pressure is now down to 940 millibars. But they do note that north-northwesterly motion has begun at 15 miles per hour. Look, it's 5 miles per hour. It's no big difference. You should not be waiting to leave because of a Cat 5. But like I said, the fact is, that time to leave is now getting shorter and shorter, and it's more minutes rather than hours or half hours, better yet. So
look at that little wobble
latest.
they did. We talked about that. You can see that little last-minute jog there on the track line, that yellow line, and it shows that's what we're dealing with, these tiny little jogs back and forth, and it's not something that you really can forecast when you're dealing with a beast that's doing its own thing here in the Gulf of Mexico. We got the general direction, though. It is moving toward the north-northwest now, so, you know, it is making some indications that, you know, possibly jog a little more of these. We just don't know at this point.
Yeah, it's right now, it still looks like a direct hit. I mean, either way, there's no avoiding it now. You can see that satellite picture. Lake Charles is going to take a direct hit from a catastrophic storm. I mean, 150 miles per hour. This puts Rita in a total different department than this storm. And this storm is not weakening on approach, it is strengthening on approach. And I've said before, that makes a huge difference in everything. Let's get back to the radar here.
Yeah.
Because I want to make a point, because we've been talking about how the conditions along the coast are quickly going downhill. We're starting to see those tropical storm force conditions move in, and it'll be probably about another hour before we see those actual hurricane force conditions. But I've talked about this. If you've stayed, if you've stayed and you're in Cameron Parish, I strongly advise you at this point that you can't leave. The water is coming up too fast, and it's too late to leave. And one thing you need to be ready for in the next 6 to 12 hours is be ready to get high very quickly. And one thing that's happened, and you know, I'm from New Orleans. I wasn't in Katrina, but I know what New Orleans went through during Katrina. Some people drowned in their attics because they didn't have a way out. Okay, and so if you are going to have to get high very quickly, and you're going to have to eventually maybe make it up to your attic, and I get that those houses are on stilts, so that would be a ton of water. That would be a lot of water, but we're still talking to people in southern Calcasieu Parish, because you might not have never seen water like this before if you're in southern Calcasieu, but bring an axe with you. Bring an axe in the attic to where you can get a hole out of the attic and get on your roof. Okay, if it comes to that. We sure hope it doesn't come to that, but right now, this is going to be one of the most devastating storms that Southwest Louisiana has ever seen, and that water will continue to come up. And that is one live picture of Cameron right now, and really 45 minutes ago, you could see the street in the middle. You can't see the street anymore. Okay, so that water is going to quickly rise, and still we're technically sort of still in low tide.
Yeah, that's a
so
problem.
after we get to midnight, after midnight, that high tide is going to coincide with a landfalling major Category 4, really borderline Category 5 storm, and that's going to cause extensive water inundation. I think all of Cameron Parish will be underwater by feet, not just 1 foot, but by feet.
Right.
By midnight tonight.
This is nothing right here. This is minor, and like you said, with this being low tide, with high tide as well in Lake Charles tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., coinciding at the point to where we're going to likely begin to see that shift in the wind direction. The water rise may not peak out Lake Charles in the downtown area with that surge until possibly around 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, or 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's going to be coming after we see those peak winds with the storm making landfall late tonight. So
you can start to see the winds. Look at the water in the street. You're starting to see the winds actually below the water, and look, in about 2 or 3 hours, there's going to be whitecaps in that water because the winds are going to be so strong. Right now, it's just a little bit of movement, but as we go through the night now, unfortunately, we're going to lose all of these cameras at nighttime because there's still power. I think if you look off in the distance, that Shell logo is still on, and there's some light on the right side of the screen, so there's still power in Cameron, but I could tell you probably about midnight or just after there, those power poles, that's how you're going to be measuring the water in Cameron Parish.
Wow. Okay. And that's, like you said, that's going to be something that is hard to put your mind around how that high that water is going to get. And, it's so deceiving. We were looking at that camera view earlier of talking about how you have, still a glimmer of hope if you want to get out of Lake Charles at this particular moment. But it's coming down to the wire now. If you're making those last-minute decisions, of course, we talked to the sheriff earlier about that 7 o'clock curfew in Calcasieu Parish. That's coming up in about 9 minutes. So, obviously, if you were to get in your car and get onto I-10 after 7 o'clock, they're not going to pull you over at this moment, but that's about the last moment you'd want to probably try to venture out at this point. After that, it's going to become dicey, especially if you're traveling east and west and this thing is still moving toward the coastline. At some point, those conditions are going to deteriorate as you're making that way. If you're going to Texas, which is obviously the better option, if you're going to Houston, you're going to be escaping the brunt of this storm. So if you're making a push toward Houston, or if you're going toward the Baton Rouge area, which is where we're located, you're going to have more impacts because of that potential to see those spin-up tornadoes, things like that. But it's not going to be a catastrophic type of a situation.
Yeah, but I think if you're making that decision right now to leave, chances are you probably don't have plans to go anywhere.
Right.
You were just, I'm very nervous, I need to get out of here.
Yeah, you're not making
and
a
in my
vacation
opinion,
out of this.
go west. Get on I-10, go west to Beaumont, and keep going to Houston. Because if you look east, look at Lafayette. By the time you get on I-10, that band that's to the south over Vermilion Parish, that's going to be over I-10, and that's the start of those tropical storm force conditions. You do not want to be driving in tropical storm force conditions if you can avoid it. And the one way to avoid it right now, yes, at night, is to go west out of Lake Charles and go towards Houston, because you can see there's not much going on in southeast Texas. And honestly, a lot of this storm is going to impact southwest Louisiana. There could be a little bit in southeast Texas, but right now with that north-northwest motion, it does look like Louisiana will take a direct hit from 150 miles per hour Category 4.
That's right, Zach. And again, this is that view from Mark Setta's camera looking at the Shell station on Marshall Street in Cameron, downtown Cameron, Louisiana, there near the Gulf of Mexico. And that's the Gulf right there. The Gulf is meeting Marshall Street, and that's just the start of a very, very catastrophic storm surge event that's going to be happening. You see a little bit of the wind blowing against that water completely over the road now, and that's just the beginning of, this is going to be much higher. We're talking about maybe 13 to 15 feet of water over this area, and it's just hard to imagine the water could rise that high, but that's what happens when we talk about the storm surge, and that's basically what you're looking at. A wall of water come in, it rises, and then it takes everything back out into the Gulf. So the thing is, that water that comes in is going to go back out, and you don't want to be the thing that it drags back out into the Gulf, because that's where people die in these storms with the storm surge flooding. So that's what we're looking at going on right now in Cameron. There's the view of the different cameras that we have.
Johnson's Bayou.
Yeah, Johnson Bayou there near the church.
Bottom right, which still doesn't show any